a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
He was.
Now, I know Hila doesn't like to hear.
But she lived in Israel as long as they recognized that their actions were wrong and they work to atone for said actions and demonstrate that they have demonstrated that they don't believe these things or try to justify it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I wanted to, this channel called Soft Take actually did a video, Selective Outrage, the silent podcaster Hila Klein. And I thought it was really good because it's very informative. I don't know how much time you have, by the way. Hold on, let me fix your.
I don't really mind. I am very grateful
we can maybe
for this
do
opportunity.
a dual react together if you would like.
Yeah,
to
that'd
this
be
video.
awesome.
Hold on, let me resize your. Let me resize your camera here as well. Okay, and then we can engage in this together. Hold on, let me make it a little bit smaller as well. This is the problem with live production, you know. There's a little bit of silliness that takes place. But yeah, this is a video that I think was actually really remarkable because I didn't know the full extent of like their commentary. I don't really pay too close attention to like the drama aspect of things whenever there's like stuff coming out from that camp, but I do care about like the things that they have said about Israel, and I wanted to watch this specifically because I feel like it is instructive and shows some inconsistencies with the way that Ethan has presented himself as opposed to what he has done over the course of the past year during this genocide that he also recognizes is genocide. All right, so let's begin.
Hey guys, it's the Soft Take, or newly referred as a
Dumb fucking moron.
Hila Klein, once the reserved counterpart to Ethan. She was known for her awkward charm and subtle humor. In the early days of H3, she was the shy, friendly presence besides Ethan's loud personality. The things she would say were once lighthearted or grounded.
She left last time as an Israeli. She enters today as an American. Hila, how does it feel? Tell me
I
everything.
feel like now I can really ride it. You know, we got the flags and the balloons. Like, I feel like every old person on a mobility scooter, they always have this like personalized touch to it.
Absolutely.
And now we got ours.
Right.
To have shifted into someone who appears more vocal than thoughtful.
Adam McIntyre needs to just like disappear. Yeah, Sam Cedar, another one I'm ready to burn. I know, you already did most of the work.
And also someone who seems to donate money to a slop tuber who hosts a show called Ultimate Review that picks apart sexual allegations.
That's Ultimate Rape Review for those of you who didn't know.
What is the people were mentioning this and I saw whatever that is. What is that? What, like, is this serious? Like,
I don't know either. I only found out because someone in my audience informed me, but they said that it's apparently like they tier list like rape allegations or something. I don't know. I mean, it's just like the utter well of depravity is endless, especially in the Western world, but especially in America. Holy fuck. But it's like his stream does that.
Do you think it's pretty interesting how sort of you, Frogan, are all picked out as, not just you two, obviously, there's people like Matt Lieb as well, are picked out as like the worst anti-Semitic terror sympathizers when there is no pushback on someone, say, like, I don't know, Asmongold, who said that he was only 99% that the Holocaust happened, that largely like people spewing really serious anti-Semitic bigotry. Like things like
his entire chat was spamming W. Hitler when he was going over this hearing that happened in a town hall where someone was saying like the first books that the Nazis burned were trans medical research, and he chimed in to say, well, they burned those books because they were written in Jewish.
And I mean, on this topic, it's kind of interesting as well, exploring your ideology versus what a neo-Nazi's ideology is, which is someone who hates on the basis of claiming that, this person has a different identity to me and they're trying to ruin everything around me. They're trying to ruin and degrade society, which is nothing like what you say. And yet, rather than, confronting and saying, hey, there's a rise in this similar bigotry that once existed, it's just ignored in favor of using anti-Semitism allegations as a means to not talk about Palestine.
Yeah. Also, Another thing that I was going to mention with respect to Asmongold is apparently he is calling for my banning as of today. And he is the largest political content creator on not only this platform, but I would say the largest right-wing political commentator online right now. And he's been calling for my banning because I said in my conversation with Ethan that I stand 10 toes down in solidarity with the actions the Houthis have taken exclusively on the blockade of the Red Sea as a mechanism of punishment against Israel that's committing a genocide, which is, I think, as you know, I mean, I don't know how you could have an issue with that. I guess you can. I know you don't have an issue with that. I mean, I know how Americans can have an issue with that, where they say, well, they're bad and they're scary.
Well, even the UK government would allow me to say that. So, you know, I'm not. You can't speak positively. Obviously, Kneecap are in trouble for what they said about Hamas and Hezbollah. Houthis are not a prescribed terrorist organization here. So people are always chanting Yemen, Yemen, turn another ship around. So, you know, I think I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, and thinking that you deserve a ban in comparison for talking about for Holocaust revisionism. Yeah, it's an interesting topic of discussion.
All right, let's continue.
So LOLCal Live, a podcast co-hosted by Keemstar, someone that previously made her life hell. But first, who is Hila actually? She's the co-host of a podcast with her husband who's turned arguing with everyone into a full-time sport while she contributes to the show by slowly rotating in her chair. She's the founder and CEO of Teddy Fresh, a streetwear brand with a questionable theme that appears to sometimes allegedly borrow designs. Teddy Fresh also has a good causes section on their site, proudly listing charities they claim to support, which is a great thing. I appreciate them for doing. However, let's just say that I found out that not everything on that list checks out, which I will get into later on in the video. She loves to draw, present her unique clothing style on social media, and she is also someone that gets particularly vocal when criticism of Israel arises.
Worst stuff in that. It's not like Israel's going to do a precision strike on Hassan. They don't fucking, but it is dangerous. It's a war zone.
Sure, it's a war zone.
They may.
But what?
He was in the running for anti-Semite of the year. They may.
Nah,
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
They're not. And this is where she gets quite a lot of backlash. It's not because she's from Israel or that she served in the IDF. Well, actually, that could be a reason for some. It's mostly because of the dehumanizing language she uses for Palestinians and her relentless defense for Israel. Also, I just want to be clear, I don't want to make Hila responsible for Ethan's flip-outs, but you cannot be dismissed as a silent bystander while Ethan spreads false information. And when she does decide to chime in, it's either about Hasan, defending Israel, or defending their takes. Took one look at her and assumed that she's an undocumented migrant worker that can't speak English.
They all go with this narrative that it was his mom. It's just unbelievable.
But what about them talking about Hasan going to Gaza?
Was like, I'm thinking of going to Gaza.
Until I found out they don't have like a 5-star suite for me with private security waiting there.
I would have bet my goddamn house that he would never step foot in Gaza. It's insanely pathetic. Somebody please. Well, and it's the same thing. To bring it back to the song, just because, but.
For the record, this conversation took place between me, Jeremy Scahill, and a bunch of other journalists where we were trying to actively petition the Egyptian government to open the Rafah border crossing so that Western journalists could actually enter the Gaza Strip uninterrupted without actual Israeli envoys as a part of like an Israeli security operation. Because at the time, during the ceasefire, the only journalists that were allowed into the Gaza Strip were allowed to be airlifted alongside the Israeli occupying force, and were only allowed to film one specific area where humanitarian aid was being delivered to from Jordan within the Gaza Strip, and also they were still subject to the military censors. And this is the reason why no real reporting, with the exception of course, the Palestinian journalists that bravely have been reporting on the conditions every single day, has come out of Gaza even during the ceasefire period.
And you can't forget the brave reporting of Douglas Murray doing propaganda for the Israeli state with the IOF.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, on this topic as well, I know that people started kind of mockingly saying go to Gaza. That's actually just what the Israeli far right says to other Israelis who protest about it. They just tell them go to Gaza. It's like a threat to basically die. Yeah. And they would probably have targeted journalists.
Of course they would have. That's That was like, I mean, it never even happened because like obviously the Egyptian government did not allow this to take place regardless, because you know it's a vassal state for American empire, and also by way of that a collaborator with Israel as well. So it just didn't take place. All right, let's continue.
It kind of is the same thing. Like, I was thinking about going to Gaza.
Yeah.
Like,
I also wanted to give
sorry, guys, I'm not going to this war zone unless they can...
So much to the point that they started fantasizing how his visit to Gaza could look like.
They managed to keep the hostages alive. You can go be in the tunnels, I'm sure.
I mean,
be
he's
safe
a
there.
high-value hostage for Hamas. He's an American citizen.
Like this is also one of the most insane takes because it basically goes along with the same trope that is always presented, that like Hamas are not logical human beings and simply see this as like they're just like barbaric monsters who will immediately go, oh, American, let's go and fucking kidnap this American and hold him hostage. This is a high value hostage. Now this is silly for a couple different reasons. One, why the ever-loving fuck would the Trump administration ever demand my return? Someone like myself, like that's ridiculous. Why? Like I have no value in that regard for the American government, nor the Israeli envoys that are having these negotiations. Secondly, this doesn't make any sense because then they would be kidnapping the World Central Kitchen aid workers, for example. Those were Westerners, right, that were working alongside the Israeli government to deliver humanitarian aid into Gaza. Why did Hamas not kidnap them instantly? Well, they died because Israel killed them, obviously. But why did Hamas not instantly fucking kidnap them? Well, because they're not stupid. Like, they obviously understand the necessity for journalism. And like, I mean, even fucking ISIS has actually gotten interviewed by journalists, and I'm not even talking about Jelani or whatever. I'm talking like straight up when ISIS militants have talked to journalists in general.
I've also seen there's some very disgusting rhetoric. I was just looking up his name. His name is Vittorio Aragioni, who was like an Italian who was murdered in Gaza in 2011, and he was killed by Al-Qaeda, like an offshoot there, and people were like, he had like some tattoo that was like about liberation or something, and someone was saying on TikTok, they were like, this is what the Palestinians do to you even if you go. And it's just like that they're fanatical, maniacal monsters who do whatever they want to people, you know?
No, absolutely. And of course, like that's the other irony of this is like ISIS and Al-Qaeda are in direct odds with Hamas and other Palestinian militancy in Gaza in general, as opposed to Israel, which has found themselves in allegiance with ISIS on multiple occasions in their actions in Syria. So, that's another thing. But of course, from a Westerner's perspective, they're all dirty, filthy, Muslimist, Islamist, fundamentalist Arabs who are barbaric rapists.
Mm-hmm. Right. 100%.
They've kidnapped.
Yes, also, of course, ISIS has killed journalists as well, Chatter. I'm saying that even a fucking force that is insane, psychotic, a force of true terror, sheer terror, which had a colonialist ambition as a militant force with no care or consideration for the civilian population overall, was still able to do interviews with Western reporters. Anyway, let's keep going.
Arabs and Muslims before they
if he's actually just worried about the Israeli side, like seriously, they can take him to the tunnels and he'll be safe.
If he entered through Rafah, which is the Egyptian crossing, and just went into Gaza like that, I think there's probably a more likelihood that he'd be kidnapped by Hamas than precision striked by Israel.
Yeah.
And then pedal it all back.
Like, there's also the other side of this where Hamas is both, there's a militant formation for Hamas and also the political apparatus as well, and like a civil organization of Hamas. And no, they would not do that. That is insane. But, I think a lot of people, like, this is a really hard subject to broach with like a Western audience because they don't have this understanding where they're like, no, they're irrational actors. Like, of course they're going to do that to you. Shut the fuck up. You're defending Hamas right now by saying what they would and wouldn't do, regardless of the fact that like this is never happened throughout history, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's especially sorry.
No,
it's
go
especially
on.
It's especially interesting in the context of how many like senior-ish, I can't remember, Jimmy Carter literally said it was more sensible to negotiate with Hamas than Benjamin Netanyahu. That they were more reasonable than Benjamin Netanyahu. And yet, you know, he's saying here, well, they're more likely to kidnap you. I mean, you spoke to Hossam Shabbat, right?
Yeah. I'm going to bring it up in a
journalists
second, right after this.
Killed.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna get to that in a moment. I watched this part of the video already.
Literally just a silly joke.
We're just criticizing you.
It's literally just a silly joke.
It comes across like a fucking pager joke.
It comes across as a pager joke. Hasan.
You know what's really crazy about this, by the way? I mean, a big chunk of the quote-unquote debate that you watched was Ethan trying to draw out microaggressions from things that were not even like directionally appropriate, that he admitted weren't even like real acts of anti-Semitism, where he said it's a swastika sword, but it's not a swastika sword, and the usage of the swastika sword by iDubbbz was actually to trigger him and to you know to imply that it was a swastika or something like that. And he wanted to say that that was problematic. Meanwhile, he's over here doing like go to Gaza. Oh, it's just a joke. Why are you being such a pussy about it? You know?
And also how aggressive it is to say I would like to go to Israel, that it's a space of coexistence, that it's actually they've got Arabs in government, you know, Arab bus drivers and stuff. To say that that's a space of multiculturalism, what's that? That's not a microaggression.
Yeah,
it's a macro.
Should go to Gaza, and if he doesn't, he should be severely judged by his audience for being a total fucking coward.
I mean, it's part of why I judge him. He doesn't know shit about that conflict. He's never been to Gaza, never been to Israel. He doesn't know shit about it.
No, he doesn't.
He does not. But
yeah, I saw a comment that said, yeah, Katy Perry officially knows more about space than Stephen Hawking because she's been to space and he didn't. So, you know, classic Douglas Murray take.
I mean, 100%. The man who talks about Iran freely has never been.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Talks like with such authority. Oh my God. You would think he's been there like 5 times since October 7th, right?
This small bit of premium content is just a tiny part of a larger pattern. Hila's reasoning is just as inconsistent. Let's try and understand Hila's logic here. Hasan can't understand the conflict because he hasn't been there, as if lived experience is the only way to grasp reality. If we were to even go with this logic, then why does she not know about what's going on with the Tesla stock and Elon Musk's actions despite living in the very country where it's all happening?
Tesla's getting creamed lately. Like they're down like 40%. The out of them and like bombing, they're firebombing their factory and shit.
What?
USA. Like,
I'm a little like I don't know if I'm out of the loop, but did something specific happen that all of a sudden this is happening?
I mean, that's quite an integral part of the ongoing events in the United States and its political landscape, while selling anti-Elon shirts in her own shop. And by the way, if you're watching this and thinking, oh, how come all the soft take can do is bring up Hasan? And well, the answer to that is simple. I don't. They do. What am I supposed to talk about when almost all of their content is referring back to Hasan? I just follow the storyline they keep writing. But anyway.
It's really interesting how we just cannot criticize him.
And then
whatever we dare to say about him in a criticism manner, we are a threat. We are backing genocide. We're children killers. Myself, that's what they say about me. It's like, no, I'm just criticizing you. I'm allowed to criticize you. And
yeah, no, I think this is perfectly apt. Everyone is allowed to criticize me. It's just what you are spending your time on matters. I think we have a finite amount of time on this planet Earth, but also we have a finite amount of time with our platforms that we have. And if the overwhelming amount of commentary revolves around like allegations of anti-Semitism that are not warranted at all, or defense of Israel, then obviously I'm going to take issue with that criticism as well. And that's precisely the reason why a lot of people who are more knowledgeable on this issue, or at least have a different perspective on this issue, has seen these criticisms as simply deflection away from Israel's behavior and their lack of interest in actually holding Israel to task.
It's also like just sort of saying the word genocide. I think some people kind of viewed it as waving a magic wand. And I know there were a couple of people who did this who were very pro Kamala Harris and stuff. And they were like, we called it a genocide. And now look, you wouldn't vote for her. And look what Trump's done. He just reaped the rewards. I mean, like, obviously Trump stands for something worse, but he just reaped the rewards of what the Democratic Party allowed. When you say it's a genocide, you are not just talking about a lot of people being killed. You are talking about the extermination of a populace, basically.
Yeah.
And what did Israel do? It wiped away every single social institution, like institution of social reproduction in Gaza, academics, you know, the people who could have taught younger children, schools, hospitals, water sanitation facilities, agricultural land, memory, history, culture. Everything that Gaza once was wiped away when Biden was there. And sure, it's accelerated under Trump, but it wasn't stopping under Biden. And if Israel really wants to achieve what it claims it does,
and
the only
there's
way it's
new
going to do it
reporting
is
that
by
have
doing
come
what-
out that has come out since then from Israeli media that talks about how even the Israeli administration was legitimately shocked
Mhm.
that the Biden administration had not actually demanded any real ceasefire whatsoever. Like, they were shocked at how gung-ho Biden was about continuing this bombing campaign, which we could all see obviously with our own two fucking eyes from the impact that it was having, where he kept saying like, oh, we're going to do this, you know, we're telling Benjamin Netanyahu not to do that, but apparently behind closed doors an entirely separate conversation was taking place, considering that Bibi would come out the next day and be like, yeah, fuck off, we're not doing that at all.
I mean, you've done this for a long time. There's no way that I can't really imagine that you thought in any capacity that this would have gone on for as long as it has. Like, this level of extermination, you know, you thought that there would be a break pulled at some point, as much as I did. I did not think we would be sat here, you know, what, 19 months later of live streamed just the most obscene crimes imaginable, like regular extermination of human beings.
Yeah.
Like, just every day, 20, 30, 40 people dead. And it's becoming harder and harder to talk about because so much happens every single day with less and less on the ground reporters, because some of the most important voices against the genocide are gone, dead, murdered. And increasingly we see less and less, and we have no idea what's even really happening there anymore, like the levels that it has now reached. And, you know, it's 15 months of this, and people act as if saying, well, there's a genocide waves it all away. It doesn't. Even if you think that there's a genocide, it's about talking about it and saying, hey, these really bad things are happening. And of course, anti-Semitism matters, but your feelings are incomparable to the feelings of Palestinians who live there, and also Palestinians who don't live there. You know, people who live in Western countries now and got out of Gaza, maybe for whatever reason, to go study, to go live, to go do something else. And their families are there. The level of trauma that they experience, you know, with it being at university last year, having to hear statements about how they're worried about the suffering in the Middle East and looking at their treatment of a friend whose family was being killed in Gaza, and the university being unwilling to say, yeah, we are sorry for what is happening to your brother, and that we should be speaking out about what's happening there, the extermination of institutions over there, you know, wiping away, but burning down universities and burning down their libraries because you can. And you want to talk about your feelings now, instead of the feelings of people who are experiencing something that is incomparable.
Your feelings as a consequence of your audience being at odds with your commentary on this issue, like the lack of interest that you have in focusing on the actual victims in the story, and consistently trying to turn around and talk about the victimhood that like Israelis must feel, or the victimhood that American Jews might feel because of this dangerous conflation of Judaism and Zionism. Ironically enough, a conflation that Ethan himself makes with regular frequency. Because if he at any point turned around and said like Zionism is antithetical to Judaism, it is not Judaism at all. It is a propaganda technique adopted from early Zionists and has been implemented in every facet of social conditioning in the lives of American Jews, and it's a very dangerous conflation that we must get rid of. If he said that and then talked about the lived experiences of Western Jews, most people would not actually fucking critique him on this issue at all. I have routinely talked about this. I had Simone Zimmerman on alongside my friend Noah Colwin, who did the documentary called Israelism, specifically detailing the social conditioning that takes place for young American Jews living in the Western world, that creates this that creates this allegiance for the state of Israel through fear, through utilizing the intergenerational trauma of the Holocaust and pogroms that Jews have withstood, and how dangerous that conflation is, and how that turns people into outlets of propaganda individually. And I think that is a important thing to address as well. Like I said, some people will say I'm a Jewish exceptionalism. I'm doing Jewish exceptionalism by even focusing on American Jews and the social conditioning that they go through, or the journeys that they go through in terms of going from being liberal Zionist to anti-Zionist. But like, I live in the fucking Western world. Of course I'm going to do that. It's important to recognize that is because it's also an issue that I also, separately care about. As Ethan says, you can care about two things at once. And it's like, yeah, I do. I do care about those things. I do care about the dangers of rising anti-Semitism.
Of course. And I mean, also, by the way, sorry if I'm taking up too much time by constantly talking.
No, not
just
at
let me
all.
know.
No, I'm not letting you talk at all, ironically.
No, you are. Don't worry at all. But one of the things I wanted to mention is, even in this context, the first ever video I made about Ethan, Hila, Israel, and stuff was actually when YouTube was still doing leftovers in 2023 or something. I remember it was a video that did quite well. It was on TikTok, and it was talking specifically about birthright. And it actually came a lot from their video where they talk about how they met and how Ethan refers to it as like a Jewish dating simulator, because one of my friends wrote a beautiful, really interesting dissertation about how basically birthright affects Jewish people's opinions. And one of the things she noted was that by virtue of going to Israel, a lot of them don't actually change their perspective about whether they think Israel is really good or really bad. But what a lot of people start to feel is a fear for the people that they meet there and form relationships with, and worry about their security, their safety, and all of these things. And it's always a thing for like Jewish people who have family there. They worry about their safety without ever considering like, and obviously because of the way that people are conditioned, they don't want to consider, well, actually, this is by virtue of the position of having an open frontier of settlement where you are consistently in other people's land. Like, people always bring out, oh, this happened on October the 6th. I think one of the biggest things that doesn't get mentioned that I brought up today is Israel used an attack helicopter in Jenin for the first time since 2002 in July of 2023. I remember covering it on TikTok and doing like my first ever lives and being like, yeah, this is seriously looks like something major might happen here. And then obviously nothing like, well, I mean, it was major in of itself, like what Israel did, but nothing like October the 7th scale came out of it. But it just shows you, when Israel has this open frontier of settlement, what it is fighting to defend is not for the safety of the Jewish people. It is not even really for the safety of the concept of a Jewish state. What they are fighting for is to maintain an apartheid regime and to maintain settlement of Palestinian land and kicking the can down the road until you reach a final point where there is no viable Palestinian state. And Western governments help this by constantly talking about the two-state solution, and you push towards this point, and then eventually they'll just say, well, they can't have a state. There's nothing left of their land. There's Jewish people everywhere,
Yeah. No, it's utilizing the two-state solution in an effort to consistently advance the settlement project and create Bantustans and partition out the remainder of occupied Palestinian territory that Israel is illegally occupying, that is what the quote unquote two-state solution looks like. And that's precisely the reason why I always tell people, regardless of whether they're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, that it is a de facto one state right now. This is precisely what a one state looks like, as long as there is an Israeli apartheid, an Israeli occupation, which is why I advocate to abolish the apartheid and abolish the occupation and create a real one state where citizens have equal rights and equal votes and equal say. My advocacy around this, from Ethan's perspective, in the early conversation that we had, we didn't get to talk about that this time around, was basically, no, that would be a genocide of all Jews, because the Palestinians would come in and just like genocide all the Jews and kill all the Jews if there was a one state. That in and of itself is ethno-religious nonsense. Like, that is fascism.
Mm-hmm. That would be much more like the concept of the bigotry of low expectations, that Palestinians are unable to look after themselves, that Palestinians are unable to behave in a way. I saw a video of Douglas Murray saying this. He said, give the Palestinians one school and see if they can teach their kids not to kill Jewish people. It's just obscene, Palestinians don't feel that way.
They have a higher literacy rate than the Israeli society. What the fuck is that?
Mm-hmm,
like,
100%, 100%.
It's so racist. All right, let's continue.
Still want good stuff to happen for Palestine. I can do both.
It was really hard for me to find those moments where she shows that she wants good things to happen for Palestine. The ones I found are in this video. But let's talk about the labels Hila deals with. And could it be that they come from Hila's patterns on the H3 podcast? Patterns of deflecting, dismissing and downplaying Israel's actions.
It's so complicated.
Yeah.
From their perspective, it's like these guys.
But they go specifically to people who they know are terrorists and they have a history of that stuff and they know they have guns.
And the thoughtful criticisms Hila shares about her self-declared enemies looks something like this.
What is this frame, bro? Why are you just like in the corner?
It's absolutely
Frame
terrible.
your shit up, man. He changed his background.
I hate
AB
it.
would love that. Although,
Hey, Hasan, I
looks
hate
like a
your
pet
new
store,
background.
frankly. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think his room looks better with
It
like
makes
Hamas.
no sense.
Or hear about Matt Lieb.
Banana, bro.
Disgraceful to participate in a snark page. It is. And
I think it's
Ethan
disgraceful as a
is allowed to point it out.
And
Yeah, this is another, like, I mean, this is drama related a little bit and not entirely Israel-Palestine related, but, you know, I guess I'll entertain it for this moment. But getting upset at other content creators participating in a snark subreddit is so funny when they openly operate a snark subreddit. And they do it for not just like, they don't do it just for like advancing drama and you know, making content out of it, like in a serial harassment, in the serial harassment campaigns that they contribute to, but they also do it on the backdrop of a genocide, which is like their only commentary surrounding Israel's genocide of Palestinians. Is just like doing drama and doing snark against pro-Palestinian advocates. It's really, really shockingly depraved.
100%. 100%. Yeah, just, I mean, just making it all about, even during the debate, having to hear about, like, your head being small. Like, who cares? I swear it's something also that you joke about quite a lot, you know? Just having to hear about that, like, in between, it's like, there were certain parts as well that I just had to skip because I was like, there's not much to analyze here. It's just Ethan sort of being mean and just for the sake of it and, like, mocking the way that you speak. And it's just like, what is this? This is just feeding into people who just hate you anyway. And I guess feeds into what I said about it. People had already decided what their mind was. I'm sure that there are some people who actually did change their opinion because of it, but there are tens of thousands of people who went in and they would always say that Ethan had, you know, destroyed you and that he really got you on this one, that he has like an epic clip of it. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. It's very hard to see.
The epic clips that have come out so far from their side have been Ethan repeating that he wouldn't like it if Anne Frank resisted against the Nazi occupation. And also, what's the other one? The Arab anti-Semitism caused Arab Jews to become Zionists. That's those are the two major points that they've arrived at, I think. Yeah, Ethan mocking your speech is wild. I will not expand on it. Yeah, that stuff was like really childish. I didn't really care about that. I don't know why he thought that made him look good. I suspected he was trying to bait me, as I've said, to like say something against him that he could then package up as like ableism, to say like, oh, you're being ableist, I have Tourette's or something. I didn't really entertain that at all because I feel like it's bad. It's a bad optics in general. Let's continue.
Also,
and if that's too much for you, maybe get off the internet.
Right.
And
or at least get
maybe don't work for a reputable company like Red and Link. You don't deserve to work there.
Or this
Instalock, you're going to get fired. One speed, always. People who defend Israel, immediately. Accusations of anti-Semitism followed by, you need to lose your job right now. That's it. Yeah.
Very reasonable criticism of Sam Cedar.
Sam Cedar, another one I'm ready to burn.
By the way, Sam Cedar agrees with me. I just saw a clip of him the other day being like, saying that he's two-state.
I don't know.
Two-state. I was like,
he agrees with you because he also like protects Hasan at all costs.
She was right. He was wrong. She wasn't wrong. It's just, you know.
You're ugly and you're dumb and you're not funny.
Hila and Ethan have repeatedly stated that they oppose Netanyahu and his government.
So here's what I'll say about Israel. Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs. They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal. He's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis.
They voted against Netanyahu.
You mentioned mention that we lived in Israel and we voted against Bibi. Even Ethan, we both voted.
Yeah, I was in, I think, 2 elections, and both time I voted against him.
So, like, what do you guys want from us?
And here is them showing empathy for Palestine and being pro two-state solution.
The problem is the extremes on both sides. The Orthodox Jewish people
And the
cause
extreme
trouble,
yeah.
and the terrorists.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
who do all the terror attacks on the other side.
You know what's really interesting about this? Ta-Nehisi Coates actually had a conversation with Ezra Klein on this exact same perspective, where Ezra basically said, "Oh, why didn't you like actually talk to any like why didn't you in the Message, his latest book, why didn't you actually cover like the plight of Israeli society? Like why did you not spend any time on the extremism of Hamas terrorists and things of that nature?" And Ta-Nehisi Coates actually had a really good take on this, where he was like, notice how you said extremist Orthodox Jews or extremist settlers, but then as soon as you talked about like the Palestinian side, Palestinian militancy, Palestinian resistance, you said terrorists, like Hamas terrorists. Like that double standard, like even that packaging in this conversation is a part of the invisible ways in which a lot of people in polite society and liberal society view this conflict in an asymmetrical way, except in the exact opposite asymmetry that they are supposed to be viewing the conflict from. Because the reality of the matter is the asymmetry actually is supposed to offer more moral credibility to the side that is resisting against the apartheid state, not the side that is like escalating some of the most violent aspects of said apartheid state.
And I mean, on this topic as well, it's interesting to say ultra-Orthodox when, of course, a lot of these people do practice Judaism like a very religious people. But like Meir Kahane was literally considered a terrorist by the State Department. You know, it's a fair term to use about him if you're using it in the context of saying, well, this Palestinian group is. But we always hear about, you know, how Hamas said something to do with trees and rocks, something to that effect in their original charter.
A Jew behind a tree or something. Yeah.
In the context of Kahane, you know, I always bring it up. The guy literally said that he thought that every Palestinian should be expelled, and the ones that wouldn't would have their throats slit. And the more terrifying part is that it seems that his rhetoric is now prevalent all across Israeli society, which is our closest ally, which is held up as the moral defender of Western civilization. And he really is reigning supreme. Israel brought in a ton of laws that he tried to bring in. And the things that he suggested for Israel, other Jewish people, another member of the Knesset compared them to the Nuremberg laws, one by one, every single thing he suggested, and said that these are actually very, very, very similar to what Hitler wanted to do to Jewish people. Kahane was, you know, so incredibly racist, and he was, I don't know, we don't really talk about like that as like an extremity or an illness within the faith of Judaism. But when people are more than happy to talk about Hamas as like some symptomatic death cult in, you know, reputable newspapers.
Yeah. Also, Pee Wee Bay says, we're settlers on native land. How many of us would be sympathetic to violent resistance by any native groups? Your bias is based on your position in the situation, which is really funny because I'm Turkish and I advocate for Kurdish liberation. So I'm actually much closer to the subject matter than you would think in terms of like creating a parallel here. And not only that, but also as an American, the reason why they call me a fucking terror supporter is because I'm actively contextualizing how these militant resistance groups are formed in the region as a direct consequence of American imperialism. And one of my most famous quotes was when I said America deserved 9/11. So obviously, that is very silly of you to point to, given my background, both as a as a Turkish person and also an American citizen as well. So yeah, cool though. I get it.
They cause the trouble. Yeah. But I feel like if you ask most people, especially my age, they'll be like, just do whatever it takes. Just
they don't
do it.
care.
Split it. Do the two-state solution. Do whatever it takes.
And by the way, I find it quite fascinating to see how their public statements and attitude has shifted over time.
A lot of drug problems.
The regular people there are, I mean, everyone feels bad for them, even on, you know, the Jewish side.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just...
What can you do?
They're just stuck there.
On the surface, they seem to present themselves as neutral voices, people who acknowledge the suffering on both sides, distancing themselves from the more extreme Zionist rhetoric.
Yeah, it's being Israel is bombing the fuck out of Gaza right now, which is a horrible humanitarian tragedy that's happening.
But if that's the case, why do so many see them as pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, or even Zionist apologists? They themselves cannot grasp as to why. Could it be because of Ethan and Hila saying things like they want to travel to Israel to show how beautiful the country is and how diverse its people are, all in the midst of a genocide?
We're planning to go to Israel in June with my parents and all the kids. It's going to be such a great trip. And I'm actually really excited to go there. I want to show you guys.
You haven't been there in so long.
What I want to do is show you guys how I see Israel, because you don't see that when you listen to Hasan and you hear all these fucking mega lefties talking about it like it's some super racist, like crazy, like Jim Crow style of society.
And after making jokes about Hasan not going to Gaza for months on end, they kind of seem they want to be a bigger part of their own joke as well.
Currently, we're waiting for like a peace deal or something to go into effect.
Yeah, we put the visit off while the war is
because we want to come with the kids, and
I don't want them to have to deal with sirens and seeing all that hearing all that shit, you know?
Or is it Hila's constant IOF apologies instead of finding one critical word about her own service or the IOF in general?
And there's other countries that have mandatory service armies.
Very common.
You're just being racist. If you have a problem with the whole country,
including,
that's
by the way,
racist.
Turkey has mandatory military service.
Yeah,
rich
and
enough
my
to flee the
parents
country.
were not the rich kind that will pay to get me out. But even if they were, they would not agree to that because they think it's important to serve.
Like, even if she hadn't said the second part, this would be more defensible to their audience if they're even remotely tuned into this frequency of being pro-Palestine, where they'd be like, what do you, okay. But like, she packaged it up with like, no, mandatory service is also good because like it's an honor to simply serve. Like making that statement is so crazy. Ethan tried to come at me with a similar perspective when we were having this conversation where he's like, well, you pay taxes in America. And it's like, yeah, that's precisely the reason why I do talk about Israel virtually every fucking day, because I see my own moral culpability. I see the violence that my tax dollars contribute to, which is why I want others to also wake the fuck up and try to put an end to this, try to put a stop to this violence, saying, oh, well, if you didn't serve, you would also, you'd be in jail, right? Or if you didn't pay your taxes, you'd be in jail, as though this is a similar comparison, especially considering that, like, I have no say. I try to have more say in where the taxes get allocated to, but there's still plenty of good things that those taxes actually go towards, like building roads and funding education.
It's also a pretty interesting take in terms of, I mean, I don't know what Turkish military service consists of. What does it consist of? What do you actually do if you do it?
Oh, no, there is definitely, I mean, depending on where you are positioned, like there is definitely, you could potentially, someone with a college education, most likely not, but if you don't have a college education, like you will potentially go to the South where you could find yourself doing harm to like Kurdish villages or fighting against like PKK.
That's exactly what I mean. Why, Mr. Middle East understander, why would you say that you should have done that?
Yeah.
It's not like a good or awesome thing to be doing, just going and like serving to oppress Kurdish people,
Yeah,
it's
I
not like
don't want to go do war crimes in fucking Syria, dude. What the hell? Like,
Exactly. Like I mean, I thought about that as soon as it was brought up. I was like, why on earth would you ever say, if you have like even a basic knowledge of the Middle East, that it's a good idea to join the Turkish military? Like,
yeah.
It's just
which is
ridiculous.
ironic because I when I was younger I wanted to do it because I thought like, oh, it'll be fun to do for like the limited service that you do when you have a college education and also have worked in a foreign nation for an extended period of time. There's like limitations to how long you can serve. Like you get breaks basically. And thank God I didn't do that, to be fair. Holy shit.
Like everybody else in the country. I mean, it's a very selfish move to decide, okay, I'm not going to do it, but everybody else will. I mean, when you're growing up with constant terror attacks, the army is a necessity.
Yeah.
For one person to decide, I'm not going to do it, is a very selfish decision, because meanwhile you're not doing it, everybody else is doing it and putting their life on hold. Very important years of your personal development, you're putting it on hold to go do this, and it helps nothing with your career afterwards. You finish it, then you start.
First of all, you would also be putting your life on hold because you'd go to jail for refusing mandatory service. And secondly, if it's selfish to not serve in the military because everyone else is putting their life on hold, then how selfish is it to go along with mandatory service and contribute to the oppression and killing of Palestinian civilians? Hila framing the issue that it's simply about mandatory military service is ignoring the unique and highly controversial role of the Israeli military in enforcing occupation. While other nations have mandatory military service, most do not involve an ongoing military occupation of another population. Comparing Israel's conscription to countries that also have conscription, such as Switzerland or South Korea, is ignoring a massive difference. And Laban
Also, I'm not entirely certain on this because, like, I didn't even know Ethan had Israeli citizenship until recently, even though I had a podcast with him and people got mad at me for not knowing that. But I just always thought he was like a guy that is that grew up in California. Apparently, he dodged the Israeli military. So I don't know what that's about when she's like, yeah, it's really selfish.
criticism towards the IOF as racist against the whole country is attempting to shut down the conversation. It's just as Hila said.
It's like, if this is your argument, we're never going to be able to talk.
Well, so far in these few clips alone, you mirrored Israeli government rhetoric by portraying refusal to serve as betrayal rather than moral stance, and you framed criticism for joining mandatory service as racism, despite the IOF's well-documented war crimes. But that's not everything. Let's keep going. Hila seems to deny Israel to children.
People are saying Israel does that on the daily. The idea
I don't.
does that on the
That's
daily.
not what I'm talking about. See, that's what you're doing. You're excusing people being burned alive and kids being murdered. You're saying Israel does that on the daily. Now, I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. So are you in favor of an Iraqi terrorist?
Here's my response to that just by showing the following. An article from 2022 states 2022 to become the deadliest year for Palestinian children in the West Bank in over 15 years. An article from 2023 marks the deadliest year on record for children in the occupied West Bank. This article is about 1 month before.
Yeah, Euromed Human Rights Monitor literally released their report on this as well on October 6, 2023, by the way. Like,
And I mean, even on this topic, like growing repression, increasing assaults on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and increasing government presence of saying people, we want to destroy it. All of these things, Palestinian life has been getting harder and harder with the sole explicit goal of removing more and more Palestinians. In fact, in the West Bank, it's much more about concentrating them into a really small amount of areas, like a few Palestinian townships where they're all surrounded by, as Bantustans, as you put it earlier, like concentrating them into smaller and smaller Bantustans, not giving them any right to live and just making them leave, destroying Palestinian ways of life, modes of existence. So there's no two-state. And, it's not really about killing and death in many ways. It's just ridiculous.
For the October 7th attacks. Now, it is worth quickly disclosing that the next few articles I'm about to show occurred after she said that she denies this. But Hila never seemed to have changed her mind about this, at least not publicly. An article from 2023, after the 7th of October, more than 3,195 children in 3 weeks. In 2024, the Gaza Strip was recognized as the deadliest place on earth to be a child. And finally, since the breakdown of the ceasefire on the 18th of March 2025, the Gaza Strip has left at least 322 children and 609 injured, constituting a daily average of around 100 children or maimed over the past 10 days, according to an article by UNICEF.
Kids being murdered. You're saying Israel does that on the daily. I'm not denying that. So are you
This kind of disbelief in what Israel is capable of seems to have rubbed off on her husband, Ethan, who portrays the country in surprisingly positive light.
People are so weird about Israel media because, like, you'll see people all the time being like, even according to Israel media, they said this happened. But then at the same time, it's like, oh, she reads Israel media, so she's obviously brainwashed in a Zionist.
yeah, because Israeli media literally has the same exact like permissible boundaries of speech. Actually, it's worse than America in some respects, where you do have the liberal Zionist takes, or even sometimes anti-Zionist takes from like 972 magazine or Haaretz, all the way down to, Kahanist screeds coming from right-wing newspapers. So yes, you can get both of those ideologies represented. But having said that, saying Israel's a free society, outside of the apartheid structure, as a matter of fact, is even silly, considering the reality that there is a military censor. There's a military censor that stops all newspapers and all media publications from revealing certain things in Israeli press.
I mean, as well, also, yeah, exactly. Even on plus 972, like the Where's Daddy report, it's very interesting reporting. But I still think that there are parts of that about the accuracy, the skill of like, how sort of accurate it is at like targeting people. I don't believe it. I do not believe it at all. I think some of the numbers are massaged in that kind of stuff because, it has worse press freedom than even Qatar by quite a considerable amount now. It's according to Reporters Sans Frontières. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous.
Also, it can be seen as I think like that report is damning in and of itself for sure. It's like shocking to Americans if they ever encounter it. I've covered it, but also it creates the reason why it would pass the Israeli censors, in my opinion, is because it creates a plausible deniability structure for the acts that the Israeli occupying forces engaging in Gaza by attributing it to an AI targeting system rather than like a deliberate killing field that they've created. So it's not even individual hands that are touching the bombs. It's actually being guided and directed. Like the targeting systems are being populated with AI.
Even like a lot of how denial operates from some of the more skilled like some of the more competent deniers of what Israel does. It's always like, oh, well, it's just, a couple of people with these mad statements. You can't pull up Haaretz and say, oh, look at what this one person did, or this was an individual war crime, as opposed to ever confronting like this is a systemic pattern that comes from a whole dehumanizing rhetoric that was always in the structure of Zionism and was always going to head to the end point of you cannot have two competing national identities existing within a space. If settlers come and say we're going to build a Jewish state, the prerequisite will always be that there is not a Palestinian state there and not a Palestinian mode of existence. It's always what settler colonies are like.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like Israel is a free society with free press. It has the whole gambit.
It definitely does not have a free press. I'm glad that I addressed it, but it 100% does not have a free press. I wouldn't even say like America has a full-blown free press due to the self-censoring that people engage in, and we've seen that we've seen that in broad daylight with New York Times reporting on Israel, or BBC's reporting in your country on Israel, especially. These are the two most significant papers that have basically dropped the ball in spectacular fashion at a time when I think it's critical that we beef up trust in mainstream institutions, like mainstream press in general. And they've done that at the behest of Israel 100%. And even then, I think the Israeli press is, due to the military censor, as I mentioned, far less free than even Western press.
Yeah, no idea what Iran actually targeted when they struck Israel. No idea where Israel actually has any military institutions. There's an article talking about what Hezbollah targeted in Israel from years ago, and the guy says, I cannot say or confirm anything that's near me or what's near me because it's not legal. I'll be removed from the country and arrested.
Yeah.
It is not a free country. I mean, it's comical to say this as, someone who said he needed to debate IDubbbs because IDubbbs knows nothing of Palestine.
Yeah. But one thing I will also maintain, and this is something I've talked about quite a bit, is that ironically, I routinely talk about how like Haaretz will outflank New York Times and the BBC or even CNN reporting on a lot of stuff because the military censors do not see a need to suppress certain truths from the Israeli public, to shelter certain truths from the Israeli public, because there isn't like that same social conditioning that you need to engage with for the broader Israeli public that has a lot of appetite for this death and destruction, which is precisely the reason why, like, in order to maintain the veneer of free press, like, you will still see extremely critical pieces of reporting from the likes of Haaretz on the IDF, for example, in the way that they operate, in a way that you actually never see from the New York Times, or oftentimes when the New York Times does get to it, it's months later and it's buried under paragraphs and paragraphs of describing the gruesome nature of Hamas, because the New York Times and the BBC understand that if you were to showcase the full depravity of Israel's military actions in this genocide, and I jokingly say this, but like, you'd have the Barbaras and Deborahs over the age of 50 talking about how they would join Hamas if they could. It would turn into like an IRA style situation with America, where they were sending material support to the IRA, directly sending guns to the IRA if they truly understood the horrifying things that are happening. And in spite of that, there's still a 53% unfavorability rating in the United States of America against the state of Israel at this point.
That's why we couldn't see a documentary about, a kid's perspective on what's happened in Gaza, like the documentary that was removed. I'm sure you heard about that.
That
It was
was
removed
so crazy.
his dad was allegedly the deputy minister of agriculture in the Hamas government, and it was needed to be that people weren't allowed to see it. But truthfully, it's just giving a child's perspective on what's happening in Gaza and showing how people's lives are. And a few people spoke a certain way, and who cares? Like, that is people in Gaza speaking a certain way, and it's because I think people would see that that actually, truthfully, a lot of the reasons that those people spoke like that was because of their experience, as opposed to being related to, Islamic backwardness and such of these things. And that's why I guess the Louis Theroux thing is much more okay, because it's showing the extremity of Israeli society. Not to admonish it, I thought it was a brilliant documentary, but still, I don't know. It's just very interesting.
Yeah.
Opinions in the press.
Just like America does. You know what I mean?
Israel seems to have a wide range of media sources. Calling it free press is again comfortably painting Israel
I'm
in
gonna
a
grab
very
my
nice
food
picture.
real quick.
When you are aware that pressures from the government, military censorship, and violence against journalists are a recurring theme, and then you have Ethan calling Israel a free society here, what could it look like when Ethan, whose wife served in the IOF, comfortably states the opposite of what is widely evident? Freedom of speech, assembly, and the right to protest are enshrined in Israeli law, but are they equally distributed? Reporters Without Borders states Israeli journalists identified as Arab face more intimidation while working. Since the start of the war in Gaza, the authorities have intensified repression against these journalists, as well as against foreign and Israeli journalists who deviate from the government line in their coverage of the war. Organized crime networks try to restrict coverage of their criminal activities, and in the ultra-Orthodox media, women are almost completely excluded. Time. In the deadliest period for journalists in modern history, at least 131 media workers have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the start of Israel's retaliation for the Hamas attacks of October 7, 2023. International media groups are alarmed by Israel's naming 6 Al Jazeera journalists as terrorists. Article 19. Since Israel's war on Gaza began in October 2023, the devastating impact on journalists has been clear. They have been killed in unprecedented numbers, threatened, and harassed. Protecting press freedom remains critical to documenting human rights violations, conveying the voices of Palestinians in both the West Bank and Gaza, and enabling accurate reporting. The Guardian. Jeremy Bowen, the BBC international editor, has accused the Israeli government of blocking journalists from Gaza because of scenes they don't want us to see. Despite all of this, Ethan and Hila continue to paint Israel as a bastion of free expression, and then Hila continues to reinforce a sanitized image of Israel, brushing off any real concerns about press freedom and safety.
I can't get any security assurances against Israel, obviously.
Well, bro, it's not like
Israel that is worried
Look,
about.
it's not like Israel's going to do a precision strike on Hasan. They don't.
Yeah,
but it is dangerous. It's a war zone. Like, I agree, it's dangerous.
They might. Sure, it's a war zone.
They may.
But what?
He was in the running for anti-Semite of the year. They may.
Nah,
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
They're not.
Just 3 days after the stream, American Al Jazeera journalist Hossam Shabat and Palestine Today journalist Mohammed Mansour were killed by the IOF.
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
As if the country is incapable of such actions, even though reports from groups like Reporters Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, and Amnesty International show otherwise. Here are some more cases that really prove that Hila knows what she's talking about. In 2003, American student and peace activist Rachel Corrie attempted to stop the demolition of a Palestinian home by standing in front of an Israeli bulldozer. Despite her non-violent protest, she was tragically when the bulldozer ran her over.
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
And in response, there were, or even still, Facebook posts.
Yeah, I understand Israel is exactly like that, especially because, as you pointed out, I was in direct correspondence with Hossam up until Israel assassinated him. So that's another like insane thing that I never got to tackle when talking to Ethan about how like Israel doesn't do that. Israel doesn't target journalists, and Israel has targeted TikTokers. Like Israel has killed TikTokers in my community, like Meadow and journalists that I was corresponding with as well, while simultaneously calling them, Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad operatives.
Yeah, I mean, Hasan was apparently some kind of sniping militant who's just, communicating with people, also alongside reporting, and just went through so much and, was really a hero, and yet was degraded in such a way. But, I mean, it's just atrocious. But I guess that's kind of the problem with the debate, because how can you really bring up all of this stuff? Because Ethan has done so much, and he would have just said, no, I didn't say that. I didn't do that. That's not what I did. You're misrepresenting me. Or, oh, yeah, I don't actually think that, when, you've said these things, and you must be able to admit that this is not anti-Semitism,
Yeah.
And I mean, even this topic I also find very interesting, the Rachel Corrie stuff, because I mean, I've spoken about this before, but I don't know if you've ever noticed this. It's kind of problematic in a sense of, not to undermine what people do, but in the sense of that people are always much more fussed when someone with a different passport, when someone with who was doing peaceful activism is killed, as opposed, and we kind of know all their names, but we often do not know the names of, the Palestinians who were killed doing the exact same thing. The people who are killed at weekly demonstrations at certain villages in the West Bank who are just shot by Israelis, the hundreds of people killed during the Great March of Return, maimed, all of these things, we don't know their names. And it's kind of like a sad thing of, not to admonish and not to say people shouldn't go and do these wonderful things and stand with the Palestinians, but it's just this unfortunate thing of how media works, that we sadly only hear when it's someone who doesn't have a Palestinian citizenship, basically.
Yeah, World Central Kitchen workers, as opposed to the hundreds of humanitarian aid workers that Israel has killed. But I mean, that is like the entire. I described to my audience the entire purpose of like Doctors Without Borders and organizations such as this one is like trying to use Western chauvinism as a shield, basically. And it's the same reason why I also will always support anti-Zionist activists inside of Israel, or even like peace activists that go and Israeli peace activists that go and like defend the Palestinians during olive harvest season from by putting their bodies in front of the Israeli occupying force, utilizing the ethno-religious supremacist ideology that is guiding this entire movement, that makes it so that they are not targets of the military. Like the Jewish Israelis are not targets of the military because of this supremacist ideology. So them using that as a shield is always a good thing, and I will always defend it.
Of course, and it's just this sad. I guess it's just this sad context of like, we're so Palestinians are so easily forgotten in many senses, and even in I will always remember Hossam Shabbat's name, and many other journalists, Ismail Al-Ghul, who was killed, but there's so many Shireen Abu Akleh as well. Yeah. And all of these people, but there's so many others who were killed as well, and you just kind of think it's like this unfortunate thing of Israel, the way in which Israel just kills so indiscriminately. There are so many people whose names are so easily forgotten because Israel just does this constantly, and it's this really unfortunate thing of, in many ways, it kind of like, I don't know, we end up in this space in which it just feels like a lot of Palestinians were kind of just meant to die unless they're kind of like international superstars, and it's kind of like a criticism, I guess, of a more general thing. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making any sense to you or what I'm saying, but it's just like,
no, I totally understand where you're coming from.
And it's not like a criticism of people, really. It's just an unfortunate kind of byproduct of the way Israel's genocidal crimes are so expansive.
Yeah. I mean, think about it this way. There was a photojournalist who was up for an award, or was being considered for an award, and Israel assassinated her and her entire family literally after that announcement came down. I believe her name was Fatima. I can't remember her full name, but like it just happens so frequently. It just happens with great severity every single day, with great frequency every single day, that it's like it's almost impossible to keep up with.
Did you know that the guy who organized the Great March of Return, his family were targeted?
I did not know that.
So he's in an Al Jazeera documentary. It's actually very difficult to watch because he has like a very close relationship with you see him with like one of his sons, but he wrote about it. He writes about what was done to his family. He was like, why was my family targeted? He had no association with Hamas. In the Al Jazeera documentary, he like has a discussion with people who are like, we come to the Great March of Return, but we don't believe in it. We believe in like militant resistance against the state of Israel. And he's explaining to them, he's saying, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. And he's giving his articulation, and his family home was targeted. No real explanation as to why. It just was, you know, and it's kind of like this crazy thing of even like talking about pacifists. Okay, he was targeted. Was he a good enough Anne Frank like character? He didn't resist, so is he the hero that we should look for? But he was killed, and you know, people will now spend their time trying to tell you that a fucking border fence got attacked during the Great March of Return, so it was okay to snipe all those people.
Ethan did say that when he was talking to Sam Cedar, which I assume that's what you're pointing to.
Exactly, I was pointing to that and the fact that this is, you know, really a talking point that has come up, especially since October the 7th, of trying to explain that the Great March of Return, you know, a movement that was premised around the idea of what if Palestinians walked to the border fence and looked at their ancestral homelands and protested there. And, you know, I know someone who was at them, and she spoke about what they were like and the level of violence that people experience. And one of the things that she spoke about specifically was the targeting of femurs. I believe it's femurs because it's the strongest bone in your body. And if it's destroyed, because the article talks about knees, but she was adamant that it was femurs that Israel targeted. And there are a lot of people with amputated legs from it, because if your femur bone is shattered really badly, your leg is basically done. And quite often in Gaza, it would just be amputated. And, you know, it seems that Israel did this intentionally to people to basically cripple a generation of Palestinians who would then be unable to live. And you think about what kind of space Gaza is, where because it's so densely populated, you can only build upwards. That's no kind of life for a human being. That's no kind of life where there's not the adequate facilities. And now, like, think of the context of now, where it's a mess of rubble and just shit everywhere and constant moving on limbs that are, you know, probably injured or harmed or like, you know, might be infected. It's just all of these things. And I think again, it's once again this thing of like, death is not all that matters. There are so many people suffering in Palestine, and yet we have to hear an explanation about why it was okay to do that, you know?
Yeah. It's, it also reminds me of, you know, the most peace-seeking, in air quotes, Israeli official, Yitzhak Rabin, and his process in the first Intifada, when he was in charge of interior security, the practice of breaking the bones of the Palestinian children who participated in the symbolic act of resistance of stone throwing. Like this became, during the first Intifada, this became like a symbolic act of resistance against these Israeli tanks and Israeli armored personnel carriers, and they would specifically demand to break bones, and they did successfully, to tens of thousands of kids during the first Intifada. And that was Yitzhak Rabin's policy. And he was seen as the most, like, he was seen as the closest that the Palestinians have ever gotten to a real peace agreement. And he was even assassinated for it by a far-right psychopath who was aligned with Itamar Ben-Gvir, and also even Benjamin Netanyahu actually wanted him to be assassinated as well, like was making calls for his demise.
I have a feeling that Rabin's wife actually, to some extent, blamed Netanyahu for it, if I remember correctly. And
yeah,
I mean,
he responded to that by saying, I would have beaten him anyway. I actually didn't want him to be killed because I was going to beat his ass, which is true. He's not wrong. He was going to beat him in the elections regardless because of the fucking peace process.
And there's also, this is a bit of an anecdote that comes from one of my lecturers who was an activist during the first Intifada. And one of the things that they spoke about was that they said, and there's not really much information online, and I'm not sure how you'd get this, it might only come up in Arabic, but she would always say that there's a trauma center in the West Bank that actually had to be founded after the first Intifada to deal with broken bones, because obviously if someone breaks your bones in a certain way and intentionally is doing it, I mean, there's a video of it on YouTube of it being done. It does not look like a process that your legs are going to recover from. And if that's done to you, you know, that's a serious traumatic injury that has lifelong consequences. And I always bring this up as someone who has I ruptured my ACL when I was younger. It's a minor injury, you know, it can be fixed. But if I had someone to direct my anger towards, even having like slight ire at like a failure of like, you know, a doctor to diagnose it quick enough and then it getting worse, having ire towards the person who has done that to you, who has like given you a lifelong injury where you can directly blame it, you fester with that. Your entire life is defined by like being shot by someone who wanted to do that for fun, who did that because you were peacefully protesting. It creates like an anger that is within you, and we're expected to believe that there is like a correct way for Palestinians to behave and such. It's kind of obscene. It is obscene,
I think what you just described is also a testament to the resilience of the Palestinians for not even entertaining that level of justified vengeance at every waking moment of their lives. Like the very fact that there is even an entertainment of a two-state solution among the Palestinian population is a true testament to the humanity of Palestinians. But that also is usually the same throughout history. There's always the same fears that you hear from the colonial power or the white supremacists that in the aftermath or during the Reconstruction era were truly terrified that the abolition of slavery would change the dynamic, change the racial hierarchy in the South, and would cause black people, newly freed black men and women, to treat white people in the same way that white people had treated them. This, of course, has never happened throughout history, with, I guess, like one notable exception of the Haitian Revolution that was very bloody in the aftermath. But outside of that, there has never been a moment where the liberated turned around and did the exact same kind of violence to those who had done tremendous violence to them. It just doesn't work that way.
And it would, for the Palestinians to inflict the same kind of violence, it wouldn't even be like a specific event of singular violence. The structure of settler colonialism that has dispossessed them, that has kept them down, is in of itself incredibly violent. It may not be direct violence. I mean, I was talking about this in the context of Luigi Mangione. Is killing someone in the street not like a great thing to be getting up to? But at the same time, who is the more violent person? The healthcare company that has inflicted a slow form of violence on millions of people, or the person who takes a singular act of violence? And to create a structure like Israel has, that is systemic violence of a benign kind in many cases, of ruining people's day-to-day existences.
Legalizing it's not even social murder at that point. It's just like it's like perfectly legal. Yeah, I mean, I guess social murder is perfectly legal as well, but.
It's just it's very difficult to see people tell me that, like, October the 7th is like this unimaginable act of barbarity, and that keeping human beings under apartheid, a recognized crime against humanity, is somehow not a kind of violence that deserves a greater condemnation or a contextualization of why October the 7th may exist. And this is something that Israelis themselves, there are like people who say this. I'm pretty sure Gideon Levy said this like pretty soon after October the 7th, that how can you not expect blowback? And he's not exactly like, a massively anti-Israel character, and there are like an increasing number.
Yeah. That was the Haaretz editorial. That was what was really interesting. I remember the Haaretz editorial board had the exact same, almost verbatim, exact same take that the Harvard student Palestinian youth movement had. And in the Western world, in the aftermath of October 7, Bill Ackman and numerous other very powerful figures that are now like permanent fixtures in the Trump administration, as a matter of fact, came out and demanded the doxing of these students for putting the burden and putting the responsibility, the culpability of October 7 directly in the hands of the violent ways in which the apartheid has unfolded upon the Palestinian population for 75 years at that point. It's crazy that there were so many crazy moments in the aftermath, in the immediate aftermath of October 7. I remember here in America where like they just straightforwardly, they had doxing trucks on college campuses that plaster the faces of students that wrote this op-ed claiming that they were like Hamas terrorists, and demanded that they never get a job ever again. It's insane.
Of course, and I mean, I get bizarrely, it was actually the first ever video I made was talking about cancel culture and saying, hey, I actually think cancel culture is pretty fucking real if you talk about Palestine. if you talk about it, it is a major risk, and it is a cancel culture that is not going to win you like a major audience for after post October the 7th. You had a lot of people who have one video where they were like, "Hey, I was fired for my job on and talking about Palestine," and a lot of people will be interested in that, but then they won't be interested in what comes afterwards. It's not like Ricky Gervais or something, where you get all these shows and doing a tour out of it. When it comes to Palestine, this is a serious threat to your career, and many people are scared to act in certain ways, to speak freely about a state that has perpetrated innumerable crimes, innumerable and crimes that I don't think most of us even know about, and ones that most of us will never even know about, because Israel has destroyed so much of the evidence and buried so many bodies.
Yeah. Also, this video that we're watching, while people might look at it as like simple drama or whatever, but like this is a direct participation in that exact same cancel culture structure that we're talking about, that one that has real repercussions, and maybe in this administration, as a matter of fact, one that might have criminal repercussions, because that's what the Trump administration wants to do. All right, let's keep going.
Posts from Israelis making fun of her by making pancakes with her face.
It doesn't work like that.
According to Al Jazeera, a report states the Israel-Palestine conflict to be the deadliest conflict ever for journalists. More journalists have been killed in Gaza than in both World Wars, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, and Afghanistan combined, says the Cost of War Project, with Israel's war on Gaza having 232 journalists.
But what?
He was.
And I will say it once again, CPJ stated that since the war began in 2023, this has been the deadliest period for journalists since the CPJ began gathering data in 1992. Hila seems to imply that critics are uninformed. Why would Hila so confidently believe that Israel wouldn't bat an eye with Hasan coming to Gaza as a journalist? He happens to be one of the most prominent critics of Israel and quite a large voice for Palestine. Could it possibly mean that you might have a more biased view of the country when you are from there and have lived there for many years of your life?
He's never been to Gaza, never been to Israel. He doesn't know shit about it.
No, he doesn't.
He does not. But he talks like with such authority. Oh my God.
Maybe. Then someone in the chat calls Hila a child, and she says it's crazy.
Bloodthirsty, vile children killers are dreaming about getting people killed. What a surprise.
What reality do they live in?
It's literally just a silly joke.
I mean, can we all agree that it was a mistake for Hila and Ethan to start reading chats from a Twitch streamer that they have been obsessively harassing? While the statement is incredibly hyperbolic, it does stem from the fact that
it's ironic because I also fucking ban people like that too. That's the other thing.
She served in the IOF, even if she had a non-combative role. And yet she continues to read the chat and start to infer that these people are just being anti-Semitic.
It's also like the Jews run everything kind of vibe I'm getting, because like, yeah, we'll send him to Israel and we'll get somebody to kill him.
But what could be the most shocking part in all of this is when Hila seems to be on the verge of revealing something she didn't intend to.
It's not a war zone, it's a genocide. Also, this is, if you want to know the constant stream of consciousness coming from Ethan Klein and Asmongold's audience, it's people like this that come in and say, yo, what's up, terror lovers? Sup, terror lovers? How big is your beheading spank bank, Hasan? I bet you love that shit. We ban this stuff on a regular basis. I'm only pointing to it right now because it just happened while we were looking at, Ethan and Hila reading shit that people are saying in the chat. Is this indicative of the overarching attitude that chat has? Probably not. I only have usually a 10-minute follow, but right now for this special occasion of a 60-minute follow. And as long as you follow for 60 minutes, you can actually talk. Now, I don't spend a whole deal of time talking about woe is me and look at me, I'm such a big victim, even though Islamophobia is a far more prevalent form of bigotry and considered totally permissible in comparison to anti-Semitism, which is also a incredibly damaging bigotry and certainly exploding in popularity, especially as a byproduct of Israel's actions being packaged as, being done at the behest of Judaism and defending the interests of all Jews. Having said that, however, there is no institutional allowance for anti-Semitism unless you're pro-Israel. Then you can say whatever the fuck you want, as opposed to Islamophobia, a double standard that I constantly mention. And I think I might have mentioned with Ethan was, if you were to say If you were to say someone should nuke Tel Aviv, you would get banned. And that's understandable to get banned for making a statement such as that. But if you were to say nuke Tehran or nuke Gaza, you can be American politician Randy Fine. You know.
I mean, as well, it's always just this obsession with beheading and things like this to this effect. It's always an act that people view as so, like, specifically evil, but Israel has desecrated the bodies of human beings in ways that cannot be compared to things done on October the 7th, like literally torn to shreds, where the point of view is literally just left in a bag regularly every single day is basically what it's been. But I mean, I think Edward Said said this years ago. You know, Islamophobia is the only kind of bigotry that is not only acceptable but celebrated. It is a vote winner. It is a vote winner to blame Muslims for the ills of your society, whereas to talk about anti-Semitism, even for someone like Corbyn who was not anti-Semitic, it lost him in part. Played a big role in him never being elected, you know?
Yeah.
Which is just, I mean, it's such an interesting topic.
Monster 1 and Female Monster 2.
Oh, it's not a war zone, so we can't say that it's a war zone? That's not woke enough?
He's going to say it's not a war zone, it's a killing field.
No, that's what he's saying. It's not a war zone, it's genocide.
Okay, you can go...
Okay, call it whatever you want. It's dangerous, I admit that, right? So disgusting.
Hila seems like she is mocking or downplaying the fact that the situation is a genocide, as if calling it a genocide is just about semantics rather than acknowledging the reality of mass civilian casualties and displacement. So would Hila also mock the wording of these doctors that have seen it firsthand?
I've worked in a number of conflict zones in different parts of the world. I was there at the time of the Rwandan genocide. I've never seen anything on this scale, ever, and that was also the view of all the experienced colleagues that I worked with.
In northern Gaza, with the military offensive that's been happening by the Israeli forces there, we're seeing clear signs of ethnic cleansing as Palestinian people have been forcibly displaced, trapped, and then bombed.
Then Ethan's quick dismissal with,
okay, call it whatever you want. It's dangerous, I admit that. Right.
Reinforces this unwillingness to critically engage with a term, reducing a grave reality to a matter of preference rather than addressing its implications. After mocking Hassan for clarifying that it's not a war zone but a genocide, what are her thoughts on Holocaust survivor Arya Nair, who says this?
You have concluded that Israel is guilty of attempting genocide.
Yes.
That's a very heavy charge.
Yes.
This one is particularly important because not only is he the Human Rights Watch founder, but he also is a liberal Zionist who personally said in the immediate aftermath of October 7 that Israel's actions or October 7 and the harrowing nature of October 7 warranted like military action from Israel. This is him changing his perspective after Israel very openly and deliberately denied humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. So this was a dude who personally was on board with a military campaign, sieges that have taken place prior, what some in Israeli politics calls mowing the lawn, operations such as that one. He saw that this was like a bridge too far.
So one could raise a question. Is Hila dissecting Hassan's every word because he's crowned the H3 podcast's mortal enemy? Or is there something else at play, like a deeper discomfort with anyone who speaks out for Palestine? Because when nearly every pro-Palestinian voice ends up labeled as anti-Semitic or a token Jew, it becomes a pattern. For example, there is Matt Lieb, a Jewish man himself, comedian and pro-Palestinian voice. Or, according to Hila and Ethan,
one of these guys who's like, he's Jewish, and he loves that because he allows himself to be tokenized to the max.
Yeah.
And in response to Matt Lieb's speech in a pro-Palestinian rally, Hila's feedback sounds like this.
You're not special for wanting peace, you know that, right?
Just keep in mind, guys, Ethan and Hila always pretend to stand for a peaceful solution. But even in a peaceful speech of a fellow Jewish man, they find something to mock. Is it because he speaks up for Palestine?
I am so proud to be marching with so many Jews and Gentiles of all ages, races, genders, and nationalities who are brave enough to demand an immediate ceasefire.
Yes, this man is so brave. Just speaking objectively, what is brave about what he's doing right now? He's
Who is
there
he demanding it from?
from question. I don't know.
Okay.
Karen Bassin? Bassin? I don't know.
I'm not speaking to you as a representative of all Jews. I am a bad representative.
Why'd you even say that? It's like, bro, he's playing the token card.
Wait,
Crazy.
so you're saying that Jews don't want ceasefire?
No, he's doing a joke because he's a comedian. And he also is addressing the tokenization allegations by saying he's not here speaking on behalf of all Jews. Because he's a bad representative in general, because like for other unrelated reasons. Ethan is supposed to be a comedian. Interesting that he didn't understand what the joke was here.
No, he says, I'm not a
The joke is misdirection.
representative of all Jews because he's probably accused
Yeah,
of being
but
a
so
token.
far all he said that he wants ceasefire, but then that does not represent all Jewish people.
Well,
That's
I'm the
not
one
the-
that wants ceasefire, but not those other Jewish evil people. Like, what do you think everybody wants, dumbass?
That's not the argument
I
he
came
was
from
making.
a secular family, and the closest thing I got to a bar mitzvah is when I was 13, and I one time saw my dad send back soup for not being hot enough at the cafe in the Holocaust Museum. That was the thing that happened.
When does he start talking about how do we get ceasefire?
We're getting there, apparently. What a hack. He's a comedian, by the way. Quote unquote. He gave back soup at the Holocaust Museum.
Wow, you guys, so far you're so brave to be there and tell jokes and just
And the
get
Holocaust
applauded.
Museum.
Really brave.
Don't get me started on the Holocaust Museum. More like the Museum of Lies.
I like that. I like that they're simultaneously be like, oh, so brave, while also literally advocating for him to be fired. Demonstrating at least one point as to why it would require courage for people to come out and speak out against these sorts of things. Or even like getting ostracized from your community, like getting pushed aside from your community. A lot of young Jews in my community have talked to me about this when I've been to the encampments where, all right, they go to college, they're freshmen. They think they can join Hillel and like all these Jewish campus organizations. And every single one of these organizations is like super pro-Israel. So they're like, well, I'm an anti-Zionist. Like I have a hard time. Like I feel cast out from any sort of Jewish organization to be a part of. Like I can't, it feels like I'm lost in my own community. So there is definitely repercussions for that sort of thing, for that sort of moral courage that you're demonstrating. But every single person understands that regardless of being declared a pariah or the material consequences of speaking the truth about Israel, constantly having to deal with like people that want to fire you or deplatform you, as Ethan has done to me. It's nothing in comparison to the untold amount of violence that Palestinians are subjected to, and I think it's completely worthy to speak out against that, no matter what the repercussions are.
It's also very interesting that he's a token, but Ethan sharing Ahmed Fuad Al-Khatib is not a token, who is someone who has made untold amounts of money and gained unamounts of prestige from solely being a Palestinian who speaks out, whereas Matt Lieb, is a person who's funny. Like, let's be honest, like that's the reason he's been, that people like him. He's funny. He says funny things. He makes funny content around Palestine-related stuff. And he's Jewish, and Peter.
And
That's
he couldn't
a
get
thing
him
to
fired
mention.
from Rhett and Link. Let's not forget, from Good Mythical Morning, who he's a producer at, in spite Ethan's best attempts.
I mean, also for literally just talking to Bad Empanada, which I understand that Ethan may not like him, but as you've said, his videos related to Palestine are excellent. Like, he is probably one of the best person at making videos, like regardless of his behavior on other platforms and the way he can sort of conduct himself around certain aspects of this.
Oh yeah.
His content around Palestine is truly very, very, very good. Like very, very good. And he's very confident in himself, which is an impressive thing in terms of never backing down from actually just knowing that what he is saying is categorically correct, and all the people who are saying otherwise are morally reprehensible individuals.
Yeah, the issue is that he can do that because he has no interest in, like, I think, changing the minds of people living in the heart of empire and doesn't recognize the importance of doing such a thing. And also, he's unimpeachable because he's in fucking Argentina and doesn't give a shit and doesn't have the same, I guess, legitimate threats that I withstand here in the United States of America. Or
Yeah,
maybe it's
I
because
suppose.
he just doesn't have as big as a platform too.
Are you talking more about like on a governmental level in terms of like
Yeah,
or
I
harassment?
don't
kind of
actually know.
things?
Maybe the Argentinian government will come after him. I don't know. I don't know how much protection he has in that regard. But
Yeah, he's seemingly spoken about some of those things a little bit, but not too much to be. Well, no, I guess.
I'm unfamiliar with the. I know he was targeted by the Argentine right wing. I know that.
Yeah. So he's spoken about things like that, but I assume it is a completely different thing. It's not the U.S. government, you know, and also it's not. You're right. It's not a platform like yours. It's not a platform like yours where you are the biggest person. Someone who deplatforming of would be a massive indictment of the whole movement of saying like, hey, look at this person. Look, we've got the biggest head really of anyone who can do.
Yeah.
We can get on Twitch.
Like I got an article written in the New York Times, which Badden put out to criticize because he said I'm a vehicle for packaging people into the Democratic Party. And for the record, like, yeah, I have never endorsed his behavior towards anyone, and have been often very critical of his mania in the way that he conducts himself. I think it unironically hurts his otherwise incredible, well-researched reporting on issues that pertain to Palestine, but like everything else, really, he's fantastic on that. Having said that, as soon as that New York Times reporting came out, of course, there is an endless sequence of hit piece after hit piece from Free Press. More slated to come out. The Fox News did a report on it yesterday. You know, they see it as like an opportunity to pollute the SEO with like negative shit. And that only happens because this is a successful initiative overall. Like what I'm doing here is successful overall in terms of changing people's minds on this issue and many others. Like actively working to de-radicalize people. If it wasn't successful, if this platform wasn't so prominent, like I wouldn't get this level of negative attention. Sorry. Anyway, that's irrelevant here though in the video.
Actually, that's funnily not even. This guy's so fucked.
Well, we were at the stupid museum.
Yeah, I remember.
And I saw that you weren't interested, and I wasn't also.
It was the Holocaust Museum.
I do not represent all Jews. No single person represents all Jews, as no single state represents all Jews, especially not the state of Israel.
This is another weird thing.
Oh my
Israel
God.
Israel. This is a lie that I see Hasan and people pander. They say that Israel's going to war on behalf of Judaism. They have never. I don't believe.
Are Matt Lieb's words so out of line as they portray?
That is the funniest thing that he says, where it's like Israel's nation state for Jews law, the fact that it puts up menorahs in Gaza, the fact that they use the Star of David almost in the same way that the Nazis utilized the swastika at that point, and they put it on top of people's heads, Palestinian detainees' heads, that they use bulldozers to put Star of David's, like carve out on the face of the earth a Star of David in the middle of Gaza in a hollowed out like apartment complex. All of that we just are supposed to look at and say, no, these guys aren't trying to say Israel is the Jewish state, even though they say it every day. And also yelling at the people who decouple Judaism from Israel is additionally silly. Constantly claiming that, all Jews are Zionists. All Jews are Zionists. When you say anything about Zionism, you mean all Jews. You're actually in a very sinister way doing anti-Semitism. That in and of itself is that exact same conflation that Ethan claims Israel is not doing.
It also goes beyond that as well, in the sense of Netanyahu openly claimed that this is a war for civilization. He claims that this is literally the heart of Western civilization, that this represents all Western civilization, in particular Jewish people, and that if it loses, the entirety of the West will be destroyed. So this idea that it doesn't claim to speak for all Jewish people, that it doesn't claim to speak for civilization as opposed to barbarism, is categorically untrue.
Yeah.
Let's listen to Holocaust survivor Stefan Kapos, who spent his childhood in hiding during the Nazi regime and lost 15 members of his family in the Holocaust. Here he talks in an interview from May 2024 where he says the exact same thing as Matt Lieb in his speech.
I say this as a Holocaust survivor, that the genocide in Gaza is not happening in my name and in our name.
So I know Hila was bored by the Holocaust Museum, but would she also push back against this Holocaust survivor for saying exactly what Matt Lieb did? That Israel doesn't speak for all Judaism. In Hila's eyes, Matt Lieb is doing a terrible job advocating for Palestine. This man is like a teddy bear. How can you tear apart a 2-minute fun and moving speech into a hateful 8-minute analysis? And sure, Hila says she wants peace. She said it herself.
Everybody's asking for a ceasefire. That's not brave. What do you mean? You want to be brave?
What does he think that I want and you want?
He said it. They say, and they want us. We want all Palestinians to die. That's what they say.
Why would anybody think that? When did I ever say anything like that? Indicate anything like that? And why would they think that anybody in Israel even wants that? Everybody just wants to move on and be able to live their life. Everybody wants peace. You're not special for wanting peace. You know that, right?
He's brave. Yeah, I love how he
that's like the obvious take.
But if this is how she reacts to pro-Palestinian voices, then how much weight do her words really carry? They don't only go after public figures like Matt Lieb, but they also go for small content creators like this girl from TikTok. Out of respect for her privacy, I won't show her, but I will give a short summary on what her TikTok was. She describes a complicated and deeply emotional reaction towards her own Jewish community. She talks about seeing a group of Orthodox Jews, and her immediate thought wasn't just about shared identity, but about where they might stand on Israel's actions.
I don't want other Jewish people to think that I hate them, because that's not the case. I have lost so much faith in my own community, and I no longer feel this connection.
That internal conflict led to a moment of discomfort and even anger, not out of hatred for Jewish people, as she's really careful to clarify, but from frustration over the lack of support for Palestine. It's not about rejecting her identity, but about grappling with how it intersects with her morals and political stance. And this is how Hila's husband portrays the situation.
I saw this.
By the way, this is like, this is why Michael Jamal Brooks used to, rest in power, used to always say, my Jewish upbringing is what made me go against apartheid, what made me go against genocide. Like the values that I learned, and the shared history that Jews have experienced is the reason why I condemn Israel. So that's the reason why it's like extra crazy for her to like struggle with this right here. And then, I guess let's see what Ethan's response is.
TikTok that blew my fucking mind. This girl, she's on a train in New York, and she's like, I saw these Orthodox Jews on the train, and the first thing I thought was, are they Zionists? Get the fuck away from me. I'm like, you hate Jewish people. And that had like 160,000 likes on TikTok. Wow. So what am I supposed to think as a Jewish person when this is a celebrated opinion, to be on a train with Jewish people and your first thought is, get the fuck away from me, without knowing a single thing about them, without talking about them.
A little bit of a misrepresentation.
That's anti-Semitism. I'm sorry to fucking spell it out.
That's an interesting take on her feelings. The host of Hila's podcast only missed all the context while she sat there with a raised eyebrow. Zero comment from her. Ironically, it was actually Hila who ended up echoing the very misrepresentation Ethan tried to push about the woman on TikTok.
I could take these guys a little bit more seriously if it wasn't for this curly ass like these fucking double curls.
Yeah, that is disgusting.
It's just...
Could you imagine what Ethan's response would be to someone like myself ever engaging in an act of like actual anti-Semitism such as this? Like, oh my God, he would, he would be playing it over and over and over again to be like, look, you see, there it is.
It's goofy.
But also, come on, wearing a full suit in the summer.
You know what? Whatever, dude. Whatever they want to do is fine. But the
they
thing that
stink the whole
Also,
place.
Chris, I know you're in Londonistan, which is the most Islamist place on the planet, of course. So if you're tired or if you need to leave because you want to go to bed or whatever, I hold no ill will on that.
I've definitely got a bit more left in me. Definitely.
All right, perfect. Okay, let's keep going then.
Labeling non-anti-Semitic people as anti-Semitic says more about the person doing the labeling than it does about the people being labeled. It also shifts the conversation away from the actual topic, Palestinian human rights, occupation, etc., and puts the focus on alleged bigotry. But that's convenient, right, Hila? No one is allowed to talk about it anymore. Everything is anti-Semitism, or as Hila calls it,
anti-Semitism.
And if it were up to you, you would also love to see Matt Lieb fired for daring to talk to someone who got to you by trolling and IDF soldiers in a video game. And if you justify your words with the alleged CPS call that was made to the Klein's house, who half of the internet is responsible for apparently, keep in mind that Matt Lieb had bad empanada on his show way before that happened, and
Also, he admitted that he has no idea who called CPS in our conversation, which I thought was like, I mean, yeah, that was also, again, drama focused, but like shocking in terms of just like openly revealing that he falsely claimed that every one of his ideological enemies that have called out his statements on Israel were actually responsible for the CPS call. And it turns out he just has no idea. He just said Snarkers did it on his story like 20 minutes ago. Okay, well, it's interesting because in my conversation, he said, did I say the Snarkers called CPS, which he had done? And apparently now he's saying it again. He's saying that it was Snarkers once again.
I mean, also, it's just a kind of thing of just blaming other people, isn't it? It's just going to be easy to dismiss it. But also, Bad Empanada has clearly realized that the best way to kind of, I mean, he's openly said it, that he joked about it, but that Ethan Klein is the rent payer thing. Like, he's joked about it, but it's obviously just such an easy way to bait Ethan and Hila into talking about him, and also to get way more attention to his videos where he's just uploading talking about Palestine. Yeah. And I understand I think obviously it's not a way I would do it at all in terms of the sense of like how, like of some of the things he says and does. But at the same time, it is like just an example of you can direct people to learning like things about Palestine and learning how to dismiss people who have really problematic views about Palestine by just, winding people up basically about something that has nothing to do with him. Like, because it's obvious that it doesn't.
Yeah.
So that YouTube is full of compilations of you guys harassing everyone left and right. Another instance of Hila using her words to show her deep-rooted empathy of the suffering of Palestinians is during the H3's Cope stream for Trump's inauguration day.
Just the other day, Bibi fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
Now, I know Hila doesn't like to hear,
but she lived in Israel. She's obviously the most knowledgeable. I don't understand. Like, how could she have said, as someone who is against Israel's violence, how could she have said the defense minister during October 7, who in the immediate aftermath of October 7 said, we must shut off their electricity, their food, their water. We are fighting human animals. How could she have thought that he was a good guy, especially considering that at this point, he had already had a warrant out for his arrest for being a war criminal?
Yeah, I find it particularly difficult to believe that neither of them knew who he was. I mean, Ethan clearly doesn't in the clip, but I think that they know. And also I've seen people defend it on the basis of, well, he did want to end the war, but he wanted to end it because Israel had done enough genocide, in his opinion, that they'd achieved all they could, that there was no more point to the genocide.
Yeah.
It didn't come from like good of his heart.
This because, in their opinion, they have dealt with the situation accordingly and put it to the books.
Narc's greatest hits.
Yeah,
this is Narc's greatest hits.
Let's look into this a little deeper, and whilst we do that, keep in mind how she repeatedly tries to discredit the opinions of non-Israeli people who speak on the matter.
I think Ethan has a lot of credibility to talk about it. He lived there for 5 years and he's married to an Israeli.
No, you
It's
care
kind of
about.
funny to like sit in America and think that you know better than somebody who lives in Israel.
Yoav Gallant was a military officer that served as Israel's Minister of Defense, and was also the same guy that said that he had ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed, we are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly. Gallant's declaration of a complete siege where
Just good guy things, you know, even from the most like liberalized brain rot Marvel Cinematic Universe ass of like approaching politics, like that's not what a good guy would say, I don't think, you know? That's what a really good guy would say. Like the best guy, actually.
But also I think it's thinking about, you know, you mentioned how you use your platform to Ethan. You know, you think that you might know who this guy is if you cared about the Gaza genocide from talking about saying, hey, this is a pretty... Like, one of the things Ilan Pape always brings up as one of the reasons he's somewhat hopeful about, you know, what's happening in Palestine is he said, if you had told me or any other expert of what's going on in the about Palestine, that even in 2010, that one day Israel would be brought before the ICJ or even the ICC. If you told me those things, I would be shocked. I wouldn't believe those words coming out of your mouth because there's no way they would, because they're protected. And to have just, you know, to be someone who says that you've dealt with Palestine when you know, that neither of you even knew that he'd maybe said that allegedly, you know? And Ethan also defended it on his story 100%. He said that something about like Hila wanting to end the war, and it was in the context of October the 7th, so it was okay to say, in spite of the fact that, you know, it wasn't just a statement. They did starve Gaza. They did turn the energy, the electricity and such off.
Yeah.
Cuts off all of these necessities amounts to collective punishment, which points to a potential breach of Geneva Conventions.
I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
Calling an entire population human animals is deeply disturbing.
A really good guy did it.
Dehumanization is a key tactic used to justify ethnic cleansing.
Shouldn't have used that word. That was a bad choice.
Alas, Ethan would soon find the error of their ways and created an apology video for this wrongful judgment. Now, usually, apology videos are titled things like this. So what title do you think Hila and Ethan chose for their video? Here are 4 options. What do you think it's gonna be? Making things right, let's move on, oops, I just like the vibes, I'm suing. Which of these very realistic titles is going to be the title for the video where they apologize for the mistake of calling Yoav Gallant?
Okay, I'm gonna go, I'm suing. That's.
I think it's I'm suing as well.
That's what I think. The answer is yes. The video where you can find Hila apologizing and explaining why she said Yoav Gallant, a far-right genocide enabler, was a great guy, is titled Hasan is a Weasley Little Liar. The stuff writes itself. So let's have a look at Hila addressing this error.
Hello. I'm here to address something that happened on Thursday's show. We were doing our post-election cope.
I genuinely don't understand how his fan base doesn't recognize what the fuck's going on at that point, where it's just like, how? Like, how do you look at this? How do you look at this and go like, yeah, no, this is normal and not an unhealthy obsession? It's like if every single time I was attacked by like Fox News, and some fans in my community have tried to say like, no, Ethan is the reason why Fox News is attacking you. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think they're attacking me because New York Times wrote a positive report on me. I'm sure they'll use Ethan's commentary in the process, but I don't think he is the figure, the shadowy figure guiding these things, right? It's because like there is a militant Hasbara operation in a network of newspapers in the West that will immediately tackle any kind of positive sentiment demonstrated towards someone who has expressed negative feelings towards the state of Israel. That's it. And like, imagine every time I get criticized, though, I was like, Ethan is so much worse or something. I don't know. Ethan is doing this.
I mean, also, I guess it's just the fact of like, yesterday he was trying to call you a liar over and over again, and I'm not really quite sure as to what you'd actually lied about, as to what these serious lies are.
Yeah, especially because he openly admitted that he was wrong and he lied himself about me.
Yeah, of course, and the amount of lies and the amount of just things that are said and just done over and over again without willingness to take accountability. Yet when a debater is in front of him, someone who actually knows what he's talking about, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He can just admit it then and never confront the criticism. And actually, the thing I wanted to mention because I kind of forgot for a second, is it's kind of the dangerous part, though, isn't it? When you're telling your audience how beautiful and multicultural Israel is, and they are willing to believe anything you say or do, no matter how much it's just clearly not very congruent with the truth. Kind of shows you why it might be quite a dangerous thing to not really speak very critically of Israel.
Yeah.
Stream. And
okay, hold on a second. Where is Hila? Why do we have this guy talking about this when Hila was the one that said
a really good guy?
Cabinet, who just yesterday was fired by Netanyahu because he wanted to end the war. And Netanyahu wants to continue the war, and therefore he fired him. Once he was fired, people in Israel took to the streets and are protesting, being a good thing.
Okay, here is when she comes out to talk. We are 4 minutes in. Now, I'm just gonna put this over here and okay.
I feel like the reason I brought it up was mainly to express the frustration with Bibi and him firing the one guy that was somewhat, attempting at moderation. It wasn't really so much to say Gallant is a good guy. I shouldn't have used that word. That was a bad choice on my part, considering stuff that he has said that I was not even thinking of. Really coming from the concerning feeling of like, we have Trump in office and Bibi just fired the guy that is opposing him. That's all I was trying to say, but I do understand that was not a good choice of words and I would not have said that again. So I'm stepping away for a little while from being on camera and being on the podcast. It's too much and it's not fair for everybody. And yeah.
So, 52 seconds and 96 milliseconds of Hila apologizing. She's gone now, and we're 5 minutes in. The video is 14 minutes long. What could you possibly be talking about? All right, the video is called Hasan Piker is a Weasley. Okay.
What a fucking liar, dude.
Yeah, never mind. But if you can spend hours on a podcast but can't even take more than a minute to sincerely address your mistake and be the one that explains the error, it just makes you such a qualified speaker on the topic. And then this guy,
little fucking liar,
to explain your wrongdoing, it doesn't look like a good time to outsource accountability. Kudos to H3 for recognizing that you just praised the genocide enabler. From all the feedback you received from the people, that's a thumbs up on their video from me. However, the explanation for this error sort of exposes their neglect in informing themselves of what's going on. This is what Ethan says before Hila makes her appearance.
Later, for whatever reason, this is the same guy who's advocating for the war to end in Israel. And Hila, looking over the news, sees that people are rioting, that people are upset, and that people who want the war to end are upset that he got fired, and that's basically all that happened. We're talking about the fact that he's the only person that wants to end the war.
Yeah,
and
he's the only person, and that wasn't even the major point of contention. It was actually, I believe, the Haredi conscription that was a big deal. It wasn't actually. I might be mixing up my stories at this point because I've been covering this. I've been covering this genocide every single day, but I'm fairly certain that a big part of the reason. A big part of the reason was because of the Haredi conscript situation.
I think that there was, even just from a quick Google, from what you're saying as well, I remember that being the case, that there's a big point around this, because it's a big point of contention in Israeli society that's obviously not of the main interest to most people when it comes to understanding it. It's like something that most people don't know about or are not that interested in. But I think you're right that it's something that they played at least a decent sized part in why he was removed.
Yeah, he was also talking about invading Lebanon. Yoav Gallant was in favor of invading Lebanon, and also wanted to bring in the Haredis into forced conscription, even though they've had peaceful not peaceful. Sorry, what the fuck am I saying? Even though they have religious exemption because they're supposed to be doing religious studies. You really are a piece of shit, lol. Explain to me in a couple words why I'm a piece of shit. Really quickly, you have the floor. Now that we also have a guest on board as well. I would like to hear your take, Sebson. Following since 3 hours ago, unfollowed, and then back at it. But yeah, what I was gonna say is, if you want to know more about the Haredi situation, it's because it's because they get religious exemption. A lot of Israeli society actually considers that to be ridiculous. They think that like the Orthodox communities or the settler communities especially are like welfare queens that don't give anything back to Israeli society and only take. That's like one of the reasons as to why they have resentment towards them. And Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition relies on the Haredi parties. Disingenuous liar. Okay. About what? That's not an explanation.
Sorry. I think generally they also pay way less tax and tend to have more children. And so most people in Israeli society, as you say, view them as welfare queens,
Yeah.
because they're not paying taxes. They don't do anything. And a lot of people as well. It's interesting. Ilan talks about this stuff that on the other hand, they view the secular Jewish state as they call it the Messiah's donkey. They think it will bring about the end times. But they also think that they're like basically stupid because they don't believe the same things as them. So it's an interesting dynamic and obviously something that most people aren't particularly interested in.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
Don't understand how that's not relevant. Here from The Guardian, a left-leaning newspaper you guys all probably know. Here's a headline. Benjamin Netanyahu fires Defense Minister Yoav Gallant.
I don't doubt Hila and Ethan would like for the war to end. She was operating off of the fact that this man had stated he wishes the war to end. But what does this say about how you read news articles and interpret them? Because from what Ethan said on behalf of Hila here, it sounds as if they're just reading headlines and calling it a day. And what was that about a certain someone that doesn't know a thing about this conflict?
He doesn't know shit about that conflict. He's never been to Gaza, never been to Israel. He doesn't know shit about it.
No, he doesn't.
He does not.
However, when confronted with this topic in moment once again in iDubbbz's Content Cop video, she seems to have a different reason as to why she said that.
I want to explain it because people bring it up non-stop. I apologize for it right away. When Ethan made a video to address this on his Ethan Klein channel,
Next day, I think
made a quick appearance in that video just to say, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I shouldn't have called him a really good guy. Like, I don't know why I said it like that. The point I was just trying to make is that Bibi fired him because they were disagreeing.
Here, you don't need to paraphrase it. Let's watch it.
Yeah, why do you have to cut her off, dude? Let her cook. Okay, that's quite different from your explanation when you apologized. Ethan said that she was just reading headlines saying that they want the war to end. Hila then said that he was the only one that attempted moderation. And now she says that the point she was trying to make was that Netanyahu fired him because they were disagreeing. What were they disagreeing on? Let's take a look at the point she was trying to make in the original video.
He looked mean. I thought he was mean just because he looked mean.
No. Well, the big disagreement was that people are fighting for the Orthodox Jews to get drafted as well to the army because they're not.
Motherfuckers.
Wait, so she does know more than she's letting on.
But Israel...
That's an issue?
Yeah, the Orthodox don't serve.
They don't serve.
Yeah, it's like Amish people, too. They don't do that.
But everybody else has to. Everybody has to do it.
Sure.
So it's like, what the fuck?
Dude, the Orthodox are such leeches there.
Oh, you think Orthodox Jews in Israel
Yeah.
don't serve? I thought that like everyone had to.
Exactly, except the Orthodox.
And then the Orthodox.
I like that. I'm glad that you and I just had this conversation before this moment to describe in detail like what the actual dynamic looked like, and also simultaneously explain how like some liberal Zionists or like some people in Israel actually consider them to be leeches and welfare queens and all this stuff. And well, turns out there it is. They're doing it. They're doing the thing that I was saying.
Because they need to sit and pray for God all day.
Never mind, it's a dislike now. So just to be clear, Hila's concern is not that people are being conscripted into a violent occupation, but that some people get to skip the uniform and stay home to pray. The framing is not so much about systemic inequality, and appears to be more about wanting broader participation in Israel's military forces. The same.
And for the record, before people say like, oh, they're being anti-Semitic or whatever, or their take on this, the only reason why I take issue with their perspective is exactly what this guy, the soft take, is presenting, which is that it's ridiculous to be like, well, how dare they don't get to serve? Like, how dare they behave like leeches or whatever? I don't necessarily find myself in defense of some of the more fundamentalist elements within Israeli society. Let's be real. It's doubly ironic, of course, because I very famously called all kinds of different right-wing reactionaries inbred, which was what Ethan claimed I was doing in an anti-Semitic manner towards the ultra-Orthodox settlers that were destroying humanitarian aid going into Gaza, which Ethan said were just a bunch of wonderful fellows that are like, why? These guys look like they're holding they're holding up aid boxes and moving them into the Gaza Strip to do delivery of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. How dare Hasan imply that they're right-wing and bad, and also say that they look like volunteers, he said. Well, perhaps it's because I don't get my opinions off of 30-second fucking clips, and instead was reacting to a news report about them doing exactly what I'm saying, which is destroying humanitarian aid.
It's also very interesting that I guess I sometimes think about things that when I see other people bringing up stuff that I hadn't. Very interesting to see that clip in its full sort of context, because I've seen it so many times, but I've never seen it where Hila clearly does actually know, this is to do with, probably the more niche part, the sort of ultra-Orthodox conscription, but has apparently, she was just thought he was a good guy because of being a moderating voice. It seems she's much more interested in Israeli societal issues than, his genocide opinions.
Yeah.
Military force that likes to go on social media and post stuff inside of Palestine.
By the way, you're doing tremendous PR for British people. I just saw someone in the chat go, "This guy is the coolest fucking Brit I've ever met." You're doing incredible PR for the island.
I'm glad. What do they all say? Is it three head that they all say at the beginning?
Yeah, free head lad. That's right. Fucking hell.
I'm hoping to change the chat's perception vis-a-vis free heads.
This is actually, this is a British Angloid Hasbara right here. That's what it is. You're doing PR.
Palestinian homes like this, and also this. It's quite telling that Hila's complaint wasn't, why do people have to serve in a military accused of war crimes, but instead, why doesn't everyone have to? Let's go back in time to a podcast episode in 2017 where Hila recounts her time served in the Israeli military that is renowned for headlines like this, and this, and this. And not once has she shown remorse for being part of it, or I at least couldn't find a single clip. If it exists, please let me know in the comments and I will do right by it. Let's take a closer look to show you what I mean by having no remorse for it. Hila was born in Tel Aviv. In the podcast episode featuring Hila, she explained that she attended the mandatory IOF service from around 2005 to 2007, I assume. The other option, according to them on the podcast, would have been 6 months in prison. She met Ethan while he attended a heritage trip fully paid for by, to quote Ethan, rich Jews from around the world to connect with fellow Israelis to get married. A very Zionistic event, as Ethan stated. But he didn't really care about that back then, and Hila was still part of the IOF back then. Eventually, she and Ethan lived in Israel together for 5 years before they moved together to America. In those years, Hila wanted to attend art school but got declined and applied again a year later. Why is this in my script? Hila proceeds to talk about how her military service began.
How was your experience in the military?
It was okay. It happened right after there was some kind of a second war in, where was it? In Gaza.
I remember that, yeah.
There was some sort of a small war.
Yeah.
When I was there, and
as we can see, she doesn't seem to even know what war this was, and referred to it as a small war. The small war Hila is talking about is known as the Second Intifada.
Wait,
and just
no. I thought it was like I thought she was referencing like I don't know, one of the. I mean, it doesn't matter. Even if they were talking about like any of the sieges that has taken place, which I guess would be like closer, so the timeline doesn't add up. But I never even thought that. Oh my God! It was during it was after the Second Intifada. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think I was considering putting this in my video talking about it. It is really interesting that she didn't even know what it was. I just think it's kind of mad that you'd serve in a military, like off the back of that, and just have no idea what anything that they do. anything that you're doing is kind of pretty. It's pretty wild.
That's what the timeline
guess
matches up with, like the second Intifada. Is that?
Yeah, it does. I think Hila's born like I spent some time looking into this. I think she served in about, as he said, 2005, late 2005, early 2006.
Oh, she was 18 in 2005. So yeah, it's like at the okay. So like okay, right on the heels of the second Intifada. That's crazy.
Yeah. And also, by the way, as I have noted, that although it was much more militant, the vast way that the way that the vast majority of people participated was still through non-violent actions. Yes, there was definitely targeting of civilians inside even Israel proper. However, the vast majority of people still participated through non-violent methods. That is what Andy Clarno says, and he says that is what people, because of course people protested and such. People didn't just all engage in militancy.
Yeah. And of course, if you look at the numbers, as is the case with the asymmetry of Israel's retaliation, the numbers do not favor Israeli restraint. Any sort of argument towards Israel being restrained in this circumstance.
No, of course, and it's kind of this interesting thing about how now the Intifada is a word that is meant to mean like Jewish suffering as opposed to Palestinian attempts at liberation that were brutally thwarted.
Or just the Arabic word for uprising, which in Arabic is like the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is called the Warsaw Ghetto Intifada. Like, that's what this is, isn't it?
The only thing that it might be is there is one... my friend just texted me because we spoke a lot about this. There is one in 2006 called Operation Summer Rain, which it could have been if she was talking about just Gaza, just to clarify, which is the one to do with, I think, Gilad Shalit when he was captured, because that's in June 2006. So I think that my friend checked this and she actually said that quite possibly there is a 2006 Gaza-Israel confrontation. So it might be that. And I mean, even then, it's still like hundreds of civilians killed. Apparently 270 militants and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, even if it's like a little war, like what she is casting aside is like a little war in one of the many different sieges that we're talking about is so bloody and so consequential for the Palestinian population, as always.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, of course.
It's nothing to just like cast aside is what I mean. You can only do that if you're like, like no one in Israel will ever forget October 7. You know what I mean? They're not going to be like, oh yeah, it's just like a little thing. It's just like, they wouldn't be like, oh, there was a little bit of militancy or something, like when referring to October 7. Whereas Israel has done October 7 plus on numerous occasions of the Palestinian population. And it's so commonplace and so a normal part of Israeli existence that like she can't even fucking recall it. You know what I mean? She can't even recall the exact siege that she might have engaged in. It's crazy.
Just to give you a little bit of context, the Second Intifada was an uprising from Palestine, largely a response against Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, including the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem that began around September 2000 and went on for about 5 years. It was triggered by years of facing systemic oppression, restricted movement, and military crackdowns, all by Israel. No word from Hila about how Palestinians faced really harsh living conditions under occupation, which included severe disruptions in daily life, including food and medical shortages. What's more is that the Second Intifada actually shaped the policies and military doctrine of the IOF. IOF's approach to security, surveillance, and control over Palestinian territories today is actually deeply rooted in the Second Intifada. The normalization of collective punishments, the construction of the separation wall, the expansion of settlements, all have their origins in this period. The death toll was highly disproportionate, with Palestinian casualties vastly outnumbering Israeli ones. Why does Hila not mention any of these? If she personally did not participate in war crimes, she should be willing to confront these uncomfortable truths when discussing her IOF service. Anything less risks erasing the immense toll it has taken on Palestinian lives. Her detachment from the suffering experienced by Palestinians is quite telling as to how much she cares about any of this.
So my job was to like, when they send officers or like people to go serve, I had to like logistically help with their hotel or a room, things like that. But it was all on the computer. It just felt like
It's a secretary.
Yeah, and it was.
I don't think, for the record, I don't think that she participated in anything beyond a brutal kidnapping of a Palestinian that is illegal in nature, because every Israeli occupying force operation in Ramallah or the West Bank is de facto illegal. There is nothing that the Israeli occupying force can do in the West Bank that is legal, okay? They are illegally occupying the West Bank. It's Palestinian territory. So she was never supposed to be there, even though she chose to be there. But for people fantasizing about like what she might have done beyond that, I mean, that is atrocious in and of itself. You don't have to actively start speculating on what else she might have done. That's it. It's just a war crime in and of itself. So that's it. That's all you need to know about it.
It's also just this is a really unrelated-ish point. I just find it pretty interesting that, you know, now all of these sort of surrounding areas of the Gaza Strip we're told are like peace-loving communities, but the only thing that I think is pretty significant is the fact that I just found it in an Al Jazeera article. There's someone saying a member of Kibbutz Urei Eshkoli recently told the Israeli media, "We deserve a Medal of Honor for our assistance during the war. We opened our hotel to soldiers and asked for no compensation." So I assume that like you're just kind of like letting people just be booked in, you know?
Yeah.
And I can see what the person is saying. I mean, I'm sure that
I know. If she stayed in the car, does it still really count that she participated? Here's a chatter who said, saying he partnered with the ADL was a lie. No. Now, this person obviously listened to the back and forth between me and Ethan and sided with Ethan because he took Ethan's statements at face value very clearly. Except if we run the video, this person is going to arrive at a very scary reality, a reality that Ethan might have lied in that moment about Hila's participation. Even if she was still in the car, it doesn't matter. But regardless, you will find out very quickly that your favorite content creator, or the content creator who was able to sway you in that moment because you took him, because you took what he said at face value, was actually lying to you specifically so that you actually end up feeling this type of way, as though I was the one who was misrepresenting the events. Let's take a look.
Boring, and I really hated it.
Come on, Hila. This is your chance to tell us that contributing to the oppression of Palestinians didn't sit right with you. This is your time to shine.
Because it was just like,
yes,
I had to take a bus super early.
What?
Go there, spend the whole day, go back home. I hated it. So I tried to change my role.
It was super boring, and she had to take a really early bus. Hila says she would have found a way to leave the IOF if she wouldn't have liked her new position.
You can apply for it. They're going to give you something else, completely random. I decided to do that, and if I don't like the second one, then I'll just find a way to get out of the army.
It was that bad?
Yeah, I just didn't, I hated everything about it, didn't want to do it. It felt like I wasn't doing anything, like I was just wasting my life. It could get really frustrating, I don't know. And you got to do it for 2 years.
At this point, she has indicated that it was her personal choice to stay in the IOF. Hila has stated in the past that it is honorable to serve in the IOF.
For one person to decide I'm not going to do it is a very selfish decision, because meanwhile you're not doing it, everybody else is doing it and putting their life on hold. That's the whole country. It's mandatory service. It's the whole country.
There's nothing wrong. I hold to this.
And there's other countries that have mandatory service. You're just being racist. If you have a problem with the whole country,
including
that's
by
racist.
Turkey,
yeah,
rich
and my
to flee the
parents
country.
were not the rich kind that will pay to get me out.
Okay, we
but even
heard
if
this
they
already.
were, they would not agree to that because they think it's important to serve like everybody else in the country. I mean, it's a very selfish move to decide, okay, I'm not going to do it, but everybody else will.
What did her husband say 2 years ago on this podcast?
I never faked ticks. Actually, no, I did one time. That's not true.
Really?
I was being recruited for the military when I was in Israel. And I told him I have Tourette's, which I guess disqualifies you for the draft.
Wait, you faked ticks to get out of the draft?
No, I didn't fake ticks. I have Tourette's, but I went for the interview, and they were asking me questions, and like, my ticks aren't always visible.
Right.
It's not always like...
Yeah.
And so they make you feel like such a fucking piece of shit.
That's based.
And so I started doing like this. You know, but those are ticks I had.
Yeah.
But I was like, and then when I did that, I felt so stupid. They're like, oh, see, he has ticks.
Getting out of being drafted into the IDF is the one time.
I was not
acceptable
doing the
to.
IDF, bro. I was not doing that. I was not doing it.
Such a striking contrast in perspectives here.
I filled out that form and I tried it, and then I somehow ended up in a better place that I liked a lot more.
So Hila stated that she ended up in a better place. She relocated from Tel Aviv to Ramallah. And just to give you a quick overview of the historical context, Ramallah was effectively occupied by Israel in 2005.
For that chatter, hold on. This guy is taking a long ass time to get there, but I promise you, I'm welcome to seeing the evidence of that, and I don't see Ethan as infallible. Well, it seems like you believed his framing on the partner with the ADL thing that was actually presented in a way where it would come across like I'm being crazy when he had actually actively talked about the role that the ADL had taken place, openly admitted that he recognized that he mentioned the ADL on numerous occasions after claiming that he had never once said the words ADL before, and also simultaneously was collaborating with Destiny's podcast co-host Dan Stalkman, who's my number one stalker, 60-year-old pervert freak, who had been directly collaborating with the ADL to try to get me and many other pro-Palestinian content creators banned. Ethan was talking to him. He wasn't talking directly to the ADL. And also, simultaneously, he took credit for the ban, as I mentioned in the conversation. Do you feel like that framing was justifiable from his perspective? Do you really think that it was? Do you really think that this was inappropriate for me to say, and it was anti-Semitic in the way that Ethan suggested? I'm just saying, you literally said he partnered with the ADL, which isn't the same thing as agreeing with them. Oh my God. Oh my God. What Ethan Klein did is literally partner with the person who worked directly with the ADL. What are you talking about? Why are you still trying to entertain a semantics argument? It is not even my words that would make people that would lead people to infer that Ethan directly worked alongside with the ADL. It's Ethan's own admissions that would allow people to feel like he had worked not side by side, but directly hand in glove with the ADL. You understand that? Do you understand that? Do you feel like it was appropriate for him to try to infer that this is anti-Semitic? Pedantic princesses, all conflation, bro. I can't believe you're still trying to maintain this position. Just wait. Okay, here, hold on. I want to hear what kind of defense you have after she describes her limited involvement.
Despite being officially part of the Palestinian Authority,
Chris,
under
you get
the
to see
Oslo
the real
Accords,
Hasanabi experience.
The Israeli army controlled access to and from Ramallah, with roadblocks and checkpoints severely restricting Palestinian movement.
I somehow ended up in a better place that I liked.
Her new position was apparently another secretary job in the Dutchifat battalion.
The new one, a base that was far from my house, so you go there for the whole week and then you come back for the weekend.
So you preferred that? Were you gone for a whole week?
I did.
Interesting. Why?
It was kind of like just more of an adventure, more of a different experience. I preferred than to just go to a boring job, sit on the computer and go back home at the end of every day. I don't know. I was in Dutchifat, that's in charge of the area of Ramallah. That brigade has like a main officer, so I was his secretary.
Okay, so you were right below the big boy.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Under the big boys. Cool.
It's hard to explain, but for some reason it was more interesting. I enjoyed it more.
You told me once you went on like a mission with them
Mm-hmm.
to like a terrorist city.
Ramallah, like calling Ramallah a terrorist city when you are de facto, by Ethan's own admission, the terrorist terrorizing an area that you are not supposed to be in, that you're in illegally occupying, engaging in acts of military occupation. That is what is at the heart of this dynamic, and the way that Westerners receive this information, and the fact that they will never understand that it is actually Israel that is terrorizing Ramallah, and that Ramallah is not a terrorist city, but by Ethan's own admission, once again, because he said West Bank settlers are valid, legal military targets. Like if someone were to kill a West Bank settler, he said that it would be valid. That's an extreme perspective that, for the record, I literally am against on a pacifist principle, on a humanitarian ground, and is the reason why I believe in a one-state solution, because I think it's like impossible to remove 750,000 people from now these occupied areas. Okay, Ethan's own perspective on this is like supposed to be more extreme than mine. Okay, let's take a look.
Yeah.
That was kind of a crazy story.
Yeah, my officers and like the soldiers in that brigade, they would go every night on a raid in Ramallah to arrest terrorists. So one time I wanted to go with them just to experience it.
Why, you just were all of a sudden had an urge to go with them?
I just wanted to see what it's like.
Right.
I wanted to see it. They took me with them one night, even though they weren't supposed to. You're driving in this like Jeep that's bulletproof, so I was in the Jeep. As soon as we entered Ramallah, the people in the city started shooting us.
Wow.
And I heard like a bullet hit the Jeep like right next to my head.
Did it like dent or just
No,
you
you
heard
just
it?
hear it. I mean, it was just interesting.
They were so someone.
I'm also going to we will put on the speculation alert here and say that there is a very low likelihood that it was actually a bullet that hit their car, but instead was either a stone or at most a stone, at most a rock.
There's also something else to note about Ramallah specifically. It's in Area A of the West Bank. So it's technically not even somewhere that Israel should be under the Oslo agreements. They have this clause called hot pursuit, which is like some bullshit law they put in. So they're actually allowed to go anywhere in the West Bank. But even in terms of if you believe in the two-state solution, right? Like it's not even just occupied land. This is an area where Israel specifically stipulated under the Oslo Accords that they were not to be. So if you are a big two-state believer, why on earth you would think it was okay to go to Ramallah and call it see it in this kind of way as obscene?
Yeah.
Someone actually was shooting the car when you went in there
Mhm.
right away.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I walked with them to one house.
Okay.
I did get out of the car once.
Did they arrest anyone that night?
They did.
Did they bring it in the same car with you?
No.
Was it like, how did you feel? Was it horrifying?
It was strange. Very, very weird.
How so?
I don't know. Just
Yeah. Notice how I think they already talked about it, right? I think I might have missed it. They took me with them one night, even when they were not supposed to. But
they were so someone actually was shooting the car when you went in there
Mhm.
right away.
Did he already mention it? Did I miss it?
I mean, I walked with them to one house.
Okay.
I did get out of the car once.
Did they arrest anyone that night?
They did.
Did they?
Yeah. She said, I walked with them to one house. I did get out of the car, and also referenced the Palestinian that was arrested as it. Let's see what you have to say. I don't think it was appropriate. No, I don't know. Well, you haven't responded since this was directly contradicted. Maybe there's going to be a point where you actually shake away from the stupor that you found yourself in, where you just think that Ethan is whenever Ethan says, no, that's not what happened. Maybe he's just simply lying. That's,
Did they bring it in the same car with you?
No.
Was it how did you feel? Was it horrifying?
It was strange. Very, very weird.
How so?
I don't know. Just you see people in the house, and then it's like the soldiers just walk into the house and look through their and find guns, and the whole thing is really surreal.
Does it feel like a normal neighborhood, or does it feel like, oh, this is scary?
No, it actually looked like a nice city.
Hila, recounting her little adventure, smiles as she's talking about how their vehicle got shot at while they were invading homes in Ramallah.
Yeah, they shot at you?
Yeah.
Oh my, were you scared?
I don't think that was. I can see she got out of the car. Fair. That wasn't the point, dummy. My point wasn't that whether she got out of the car or not. My point was that you believe everything that Ethan says, and you should have perhaps at least the same degree of skepticism that you apply to my commentary to Ethan. Do you understand? That's the main point of contention here, not whether or not she got out of the car. We know that she got out of the car. I was waiting for you to see it with your own two eyes. And also, again, 115 IG stories pales in comparison to spending 3% of 2 months on video content. Anti-sympathetic, maybe. Don't you think 110 IG stories over 5 months is vastly different on a scale than 3% a month for 2 months being specifically spent talking about him. Yes, the reason why my commentary, if you noticed, was if you watched, not 5 months, 3 months, by the way, again, lying once again, okay? 3 months, not 5. January 31st, 2025, 2 posts a day, 9 posts per week. And that's just his Instagram stories. And that's without even the videos on his Instagram stories. And the reason why I brought that up was specifically to show the insanity in the same time frame that he was saying that I was like talking about him all the time. And I only started talking about him after he actively and successfully deplatformed content creators that were pro-Palestinian and had made like 1 million fucking YouTube videos on me by that point. Up until December 2024, I kept telling people not to attack Ethan. All the way up until December 2024, I kept saying like, hey man, it's fine. I don't really care. It's, you know, I don't give a shit about Ethan. It's drama. I care about covering the genocide, which is incredibly confusing because he makes it seem as though in that time frame, he was actively attacking me while I was still telling chatters not to bring him up. Okay? Why are you bringing Chris into this? Because I wanted him to see the back and forth, the full Hasanabi experience. Okay?
I also just do not like. I don't mind. Like I don't care at all. Like
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here. I don't feel brought into anything. This is like obviously I say things about Palestine online. I experience stuff like this on a much smaller scale. You know, it's not like some oddity of like people just saying, "Oh, you know, you're being disingenuous. You're being this. You're that." You know, it's
Look,
standard.
this is look at his little warriors in the chat trying to get at least some kind of victory here. And if I don't give them this victory, they're going to turn around and say Hasan is so mean. He refuses to concede on any point. Please just say that your choice of words wasn't perfect. Everyone understands why you used the word partnered or worked with. Anyone would believe that from Ethan's own words, but fighting the semantic argument doesn't look good for you. Okay, he's fighting the semantic argument though. You already conceded to my framing. So why the fuck do you still want me to apologize or say I wasn't using the perfect choice of words? Especially when you seemingly apparently agree with me. Why do you want to do that? Okay? Why? Why do you want to do that? Because you are conceding to the framing of a person that is, by your account, literally trying to smear me as an anti-Semite. Yeah, just lie so that my favorite content creator can feel better, or at least their audience will actually change their attitude towards you. They're not. As you noticed, their audience members are very firmly committed to advancing the conversation or defending Ethan more than anything else.
Scared?
It was pretty weird.
You
Yeah,
were
we were in a jeep in a really risky area.
Yeah.
And then there was like a right here.
No!
It hit the jeep right next to my ear.
Oh my god. And did you smile like you're smiling now, or?
I think I did.
Yeah.
I think I did.
Well, did you? Well, I mean, what do you do? I mean, do you crowd? You just did that? That's so funny. If we cut in the past and we saw that and she was doing that, that would be the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Once again, I want to show this as well. This is the community that these people are coming from. This is the H3H3 Productions subreddit. Let's take a look. Okay. After seeing the title of Hasan's latest video, Asmongold thinks Hasan should be banned from Twitch for blatantly supporting terrorists. Once again, partnering with the largest right-wing content creator who has said very suspicious things about the Holocaust and Nazi Germany in the past, to actively deplatform the largest progressive content creator in North America. How did this happen? Not gonna lie, I'm loving the fact that these sociopaths are doubling down. All that tiptoeing around finally stops, and they just confirm what we all thought about them. 1 or 2 more double downs from Haas, and he'll be sharing links where to enlist to become a Houthi to his fans. If he was saying the same about black people that he does about Jews, etc., he'd have been banned 10 times over. Oh my God, these guys also are always playing fast and loose with these comparisons. Like, yeah, if hey, you say you like the HBO show Common Misconceptions, but if you were to say that about child pornography, you'd go to jail. Exactly. These are different fucking situations. Not making a moral conflation between Jews and that. I'm not saying that in this analog, but yes, different things are different, okay? In this circumstance, my criticism is not against Jewish people, it's against Israel, okay? Israel and its genocide. Of course, if there was a nation state that said, we're doing this for black people, we're doing this for black people, and they were doing a fucking apartheid, if they were enacting an apartheid regime that was doing a fucking genocide, then I think it would be valid criticism. As a matter of fact, I'll give you one last example before we move back to the video. I feel like I'm harassing Chris here with this endless back and forth. I criticize Saudi Arabia all the fucking time. Ain't nobody comes around and says, hey, man, you're being real Islamophobic with your criticisms of Saudi Arabia. I wonder why no one thinks that Saudi Arabia, which literally has Mecca and Medina, okay, inside of its boundaries, the Saudi kingdom is supremely important. Muslims from all around the planet literally travel to Saudi Arabia. That's how important it is for Islam. And yet, for some reason, when I criticize Saudi Arabia for its mass starvation campaign in Yemen or its participation in 9/11, for example, nobody goes, hey, man, you're being quite Islamophobic. Why? Because you can understand that that's not about Islam at all, but instead is about Saudi Arabia. So why do you make that own conflation? Why do you make that same conflation when it comes to Israel and Judaism and Jews in general?
Do people regularly call you Hamas liker instead of Hasan Piker? I've not heard that one before.
They say Hamas liker, they say Hasanabi. There's a lot. Hasanabi, they try to do that one, but that didn't really stick. Anyway, I just think it's a different scale. Okay, got it.
There's still no word from her that Ramallah is actually a Palestinian city, not even in that moment when Ethan called it a terrorist city.
Yeah.
Despite the fact it was already under Israeli occupation during her time there. Hila recounting her time in the IOF was that she was bored working as a secretary, wanted to go on a road trip, and even admits she would have tried to get out of it if her new role was boring too, all while smiling. Then, any attempt from Ethan to bring at least some critical thought of this particular scenario of raiding a Palestinian home, we get this.
Are there lessons, disciplines, things that you learned, that you retained from that period in your life? How did it change you going through that?
I'm not sure that it changed me. I think the biggest thing is just like being put in a place with a group of people that maybe in normal life you wouldn't necessarily become friends with, but in this situation you just become friends with them and they become your family. So that aspect of it was interesting. But I mean, I don't know.
It was just some bullshit job for you for 2 years.
In a way.
Hila comes across as detached. You can't help but infer that she is simply unwilling to confront the moral weight of the topic. There's no reflection, no critical engagement, just surface level remarks that sidestep the deeper conversation. And when you think Hila served in the IOF long before October 7th, then let me tell you that does not mean that the IOF did not already have a backlog of widespread documentation of its war crimes and atrocities. And if you think she just seems shy or struggled to articulate her thoughts, well, let me also tell you that she had no trouble expressing her thoughts, her take, and herself earlier in the episode when discussing the involvement of Louis C.K. in the Me Too movement.
I felt really sad, like yesterday, especially when the whole story officially came out. For some reason, with someone like Harvey Weinstein, I don't care as much. It's sad in a different way, just sad that it happens. But with Louis, I kind of feel like he died yesterday.
He said in his apology, he justified it by saying, well, I asked girls first if I could show them my dick.
Yeah.
But he acknowledges, like,
the situation is much more complicated than that. Yeah. So even if you say yes at the moment, as the lady, even if she said yes at the moment, I think the situation is so surreal. You're like with one of your idols.
Right.
And you're thinking at the moment, this is weird, but I don't know what to do. So you say yes, but later
not even expect.
Like, she's clearly not an unempathetic person. You know what I mean? Like, she clearly is capable of demonstrating empathy. This example, in my opinion, showcases that, where she recognizes the importance of consent and that consent can be revoked. And also that the improper power dynamic between a fan and a person that they've like idolized. There's a lot of nuance in this situation for both the perpetrator and plenty of empathy for the victim. And yet, it's, I don't know. It's just like there is none of that for Palestinians, Palestinian women, Palestinian men, Palestinian children.
Him to necessarily even
you think
strip
maybe he's
naked.
kidding or something.
Yeah.
But later you can think about it and be like, that was really fucked up.
Or how she views American students protesting against the Israeli government.
Talk about someone who's going to UC Berkeley, paid by their parents $200,000 tuition on campus protesting Israel. Do you find that ironic?
I do. When I lived in Israel, I used to criticize Israel a lot.
Yeah,
like,
me too,
as an
actually.
Israeli
Yeah.
and the army and a lot of stuff. But when we moved here and I started to go on Reddit and stuff like that, and just being more aware of like the online criticism and there's
It's not just online, but it's
not just
general.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just became more aware of like the criticism here of Israel.
Yeah, apartheid
and
state
in
occupation,
general
illegal
around the world.
settlements.
And it's really, I personally think it's so ironic. It's just like, I don't know, it's kids sitting here in like beautiful California criticizing it, like you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
Now, I get it. You were 18 at the time, you've grown up in Israel all your life. All you've seen and heard are horror stories because you're surrounded by Israeli media. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion hadn't released yet. Access to the World Wide Web wasn't so common. How are you supposed to think to yourself, maybe we shouldn't contribute to the oppression of Palestinians? I don't want to go to jail and have a hard time getting a job. I have no idea that in 2025 I'm going to get paid to crash out live on a podcast. Like in this same episode when she talks about her perspective as a child in Israel.
Let's say less specific criticism, a more general, like they build a wall and Israel should be a one state with Palestinians and Israel's all living together. They should reduce the borders and remove the gate. That to me seems like super ignorant.
It is, because when I grew up, I couldn't really take a bus. I was afraid of blowing up.
Right.
And now it doesn't really happen. So the wall did help. So should we
Can
not
you
have a
explain-
wall?
Can you explain about the wall for people who don't know about it?
I don't know like, how to explain
Well, it's
it.
I guess simply it's like
It was built to prevent this attack.
It's understandable that as a child, you feared for your life and saw the wall as a protective measure. No one can blame you for not wanting to be harmed. But while Hila defends the wall as a necessary security measure, as a grown adult
I gotta
here,
pee.
29 years
I'll be back.
old, she fails to acknowledge its broader implications. It's 2017, we have technology and access to information now. Maybe we could be asking ourselves, who decided a wall was the answer? And what alternatives were ignored? When you build a wall, are you defending yourself or are you just deepening the divide? Why do the people whom the wall is designed to stave off feel so desperate that they resort to such tragic violent acts? The wall she spoke of isolated communities, stole land, and enforced apartheid conditions. You can recognize that the fear was real while still being honest about how the wall is a tool of oppression. All these clips are so many years from that time and struggles to apply the same level of introspection when recalling their involvement in something as significant as their military service in the IOF. And she has no hesitation in defending mandatory service in Israel to this day.
I mean, when you're growing up with constant terror attacks, the army is a necessity. And I'm sorry if people think that's a controversial statement. That is the reality of Israel.
She has to be so influenced by Israeli media to not comprehend that the same IOF she believes is a necessity is the same IOF that has continuously made Gaza to become the deadliest place on earth for children for the last 3 consecutive years. Every time she gets called out or criticized for things she said on the podcast, she gets super defensive and brushes off any critique or concern about this in such a annoyed, guilt-dumping and condescending manner.
Let's remind everybody how old that was. That was like so long ago. Narc's greatest hits.
Yeah, it
this
is.
is Narc's greatest hits.
think he may-
This is just like, I can't take this seriously, but I have to because this is crazy. This person doesn't know what they're talking about at all.
This is where my pussy ass comes into play, where I always say it's not about what you've done, it's about what you're doing right now. Because I, once again, would be deeply hypocritical living in the United States of America, also a country that was built off of settler colonial violence, indigenous genocide. I totally understand how social conditioning plays a role in the development of people and how they in how they arrive at the positions that they arrive at and what they do. That's the reason why I'm always much more careful in my analysis and give people grace regardless of what they've done in the past. Chris, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
I've kind of somehow managed to forget.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't worry at all. Don't apologize. It's fine. It's a regular occurrence. Actually, sorry. Yeah, I guess a lot of people probably don't know, but Ilan Pappé served in the IDF.
Yeah.
Like, Ilan served, and he said he spoke about, like, where we asked him once, like, oh, why did you change your opinion about all of it? And he was like, it's literally because I started reading history and I kept asking my professors, I kept asking them, why is there just a bit that doesn't make sense? Like, why is there this bit just missing? And they just don't worry about it. And, he kind of said, oh, I didn't feel that was a reasonable position. And I mean, this person noted it, but just like, it's mad to hear the thing about the wall. Like, the wall was intentionally built to take away Palestinian land.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. It's not about what you've done. It's always understandable that no one is above propaganda. Everyone is susceptible to social conditioning. It's very powerful. It's more so about how you reflect on those actions and then how you atone for your past mistakes. This is why when Ethan asked me, like, oh, well, you knew Hila had served in the IDF. Like, I had never even considered it. I didn't even know that she had these sorts of positions. I certainly didn't know that she had also participated in an illegal raid in Ramallah. But, for me, if she was a staunch anti-Zionist, why the fuck would I ever criticize her? I would never do that.
You think about how these narratives scare you, but then you reach a certain point in your life and you just think you might want to engage with them and have, like, a deeper thought rather than just refuse all challenges to your ideology and decry them as anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
In other countries that have mandatory service, you're just being racist. If you have a problem with the whole country, Ethan is allowed to point it out.
And also,
if that's too much for you, maybe get off the internet.
You don't have to be the one that is out there in the field with a weapon in your hands to contribute to the oppression of Palestinians. You also actively contribute to the oppression of Palestinians when you are a low-level secretary behind a desk, managing the life of someone so that they have more time to unalive Palestinians. And you are more of a contributor to this when you actively seek out a role you can enjoy more and then accept it because you are so bored. And what does it make you when you participate in a raid in a nice Palestinian city just to watch what's going on because you were curious? And I'm not asking her to get on the podcast right now and apologize for what you did 20 years ago. I don't need to ask someone for something that maybe warrants a response. This type of attitude towards her mandatory service is a contributing reason as to why people not only see you as someone without a good take, but also a soft take. Thanks, guys. Subscribing is free. And despite the countless credible news articles that exist available at your disposal, just look at this clip of them reflecting on this podcast in 2023.
Arrest anyone that night?
They did.
Did they bring it in the same car with you?
No.
Oh, different car.
There's a few.
It's November 2nd, 2023. Gaza is under relentless bombardment. Thousands are dead, most of them civilians. And Hila, an Israeli who served in the IOF, is on camera watching an old podcast clip where she talks about her military service. You'd think in that moment she might say something, reflect, acknowledge, criticize, but no. She just sucks on a lollipop. This is the same person who insists no one else can speak on the conflict unless they're Israeli, not even Jews from outside the country. And yet, when given the chance to speak from that so-called position of authority, she says nothing while the bombs fall. However, Ethan has something to add.
It's so complicated.
Yeah.
From their perspective, it's like, these guys.
But they go specifically to
Oh my God, I'm almost like even empathizing with the Palestinians in this fucking clip.
Oh my goodness. A round of applause for this hell of a man. Voices for Palestinians Instagram, put that post back up. By God. Yes. Yes. Fast forward to February 7th, 2020.
Yeah, his fans try to use that too to be like, dude, he's so pro-Palestinian. He's so pro-Palestinian. Like, yeah, that's the reason why I thought he was. I did for the longest fucking time, I was like, he's probably a liberal Zionist who can be like moved in the direction of anti-Zionism as many many American Jews have in the past. You know what I mean? Like that was my estimation, and I think I was wrong.
25, and Hila getting a Star of David tattoo. Ethan says she's embracing her identity. Sure, that's one way to look at it. Although I must say that this pose with this tattoo could leave some people to wonder what's happening here. And when the backlash rolls in, with people calling her out for the tattoo, some even comparing it to a swastika, she's suddenly ready to speak. She's not silent then. She's fully here to talk about the anti-Semitism she faces and call people out. But where was this voice when the hard questions about Israel's actions were on the table? Where was the voice when it was time to acknowledge the responsibility tied to her identity? When watching this, it left me with a weird aftertaste. When she watches Hasan use the word genocide in regards to Israel's actions,
Oh, it's not a war zone, so we can't say that it's a war zone? That's not woke enough?
she gets snarky and defensive. The crickets are still cricketing about her lack of public criticism in regards of almost everything Israel does. But when it's time to defend her right to wear a symbol that, let's be honest, not only represents Judaism but also Israel, she's loud. She got the words to speak up. But when it's time to speak out about the actions of her country, the silence is deafening.
It's successful in its own right, and there's really nothing shady going on with Teddy Fresh.
So, Hila Klein, fashion mogul, creative genius, and self-proclaimed authority in what makes good merch. She's got opinion.
Still not. The pants are just terrible.
Terrible. This is Brazil.
What?
My goodness. Why are they not more swag?
And especially when it comes to HasanPiker's merch.
Wait, so why is he dressed like that? Let me see this one with the sword. Oh my god.
Yeah, bro, what are you doing with the sword there, bud? What year is it?
What does the shirt
Is this
say?
fucking
Narrative overcomes truth. Oh my god. The art is Hasan sitting on his computer reading chat.
I like the art on all of it.
Yeah,
I
have no
agree that the
problem with
captions make
art.
it kind of.
It's the concept.
Yeah, the art-
I have no problem with the art at all.
In her eyes, his...
For the record, Union made, American made, ideology.shop. And also, every single drop that I do is surrounding a specific political issue that is like breaking my brain. And the last one was about misinformation. That's why I say it's some of the things that I say regularly, like narrative overcomes truth. You know, if you guys wanted to know. But it is pretty funny that they're shitting on my merch. You know, I'm not going to say nothing. Like, there's some pieces that I used to wear and actually did enjoy wearing, and some that wasn't so great. Okay, that was what really pissed off Ethan. I wore the Kai baby tee yesterday, and the lady at Sephora loved it and my outfit. Hell yeah, you be.
His photo shoot is cringe and themeless. For someone that is the creative force behind Teddy Fresh and seemingly wants to be a fashion mogul, you don't have to like Hasan to understand there is a deliberate and recognizable theme here. Aestheticized political rebellion through modern streetwear with a mall ninja vibe leaning into satire. Is it so hard to recognize that? Now, I'm not saying this because I'm upset that someone said mean things about his merch. This is just a great example of how personal bias can make someone look like a huge hypocrite. Because if you're going to critique someone else's brand, your own better be good. And that brings us to Teddy Fresh.
Oh God, is this guy gonna rip into Teddy Fresh? Uh-oh.
How, what does, how,
I don't know. It's a little teddy bear.
Hila has always emphasized how much of Teddy Fresh is her original vision. The brand, she claims, is deeply personal, uniquely designed, and all her own work. In 2017, again, the same interview with her husband, she explained how she loves to draw her designs by hand.
Say the Felix take to Chris. No, I will not be repeating the Felix tweet to Chris. He can find it on his own because, again, you guys are baiting me into saying another Felix Biederman thing. And every time I repeat Felix Biederman's statements on this broadcast and directly attribute those quotes to Felix Biederman, I get called an anti-Semite, okay? Well, I get called an anti-Semite when I'm not quoting Felix Biederman as well. And to be fair, quoting Felix Biederman, understandable that someone would sometimes say I'm anti-Semitic for quoting Felix Biederman. But, you know, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at all today.
Could someone in the
Then
chat
she was
please
still
link
in the
the
process of understanding their own concept and developing Teddy Fresh. Now, 8 years later, I wonder if Hila found her concept. Because what we see a lot of in their marketing is this kid core. Adult models dressed like kids and presented like kids and teenagers, paired with environments that contain things like a poster with the words on the wall.
Referred to as a lolly.
What's that?
It's like a genre of hentai where the girls are very young.
And it's interesting to see her reaction to this because her own brand's marketing sometimes leans into aesthetics that aren't, of course, the same thing, but kind of in the same neighborhood. And
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but like on the aesthetic front, I don't, it's not my cup of tea, but I think this is a little bit of a stretch. Okay. And this has nothing to do with like Hila Klein and her activities and fucking like, it's just, I think it's it's a little bit of a stretch. It's a personal, like there is clearly some kind of artistic vision here. Okay. It's not for me. I don't really care. I feel like, this video was so good for 59 minutes. You know what I mean? Where he was like diving into like serious historical reference points and describing what she was doing as like being pro-Israel and why people can arrive at that position. This part I don't really care about that much.
And those themes paired with featuring young children, also with their faces unblurred, is undoubtedly critical. I just want to say that this is quite irresponsible and that if the issue is about how people present their merch, then Teddy Fresh needs to take a look into a mirror. Now let's talk a little bit of Control-C, Control-V. There have been a few instances where Teddy Fresh had been accused of dipping a little too deep into the honey jar of inspiration from fellow designers. Some might even say they snorkeled. Now, I just want to be clear that I am not accusing Teddy Fresh and the people behind it of stealing designs. I just want to point out some similarities here. The teddy bear X-ray long sleeve tee from 2021 is particularly interesting because two parts might appear as quite similar to two separate designs. This is a long sleeve tee from Hila Klein. It looks like the body was...
Oh no. Ew. Hila Klein. Oh my God. Chris, I don't know if you're a big fashion guy, but I always joke about how the only people that wear Hila Klein are like cryptocurrency sharks and pedophiles that live in the state of Florida. This is nothing to do with Teddy Fresh. I'm just shitting on Hila Klein for the record because it is, oh my Lord, it is like the ugliest shit. It is the Richard Mille of brands. What Richard Mille is to watches, which I also don't like, and maybe a lot of the big face enjoyers are gonna fucking get mad at me for that. But Hila Klein, as someone who enjoys the art of fashion, I can't stand Hila Klein.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever even heard of Hila Klein. I'm, as you can tell, a bit of an unfashionable character. I'm wearing a t-shirt.
Look at that skeleton rainbow Hila Klein. Exactly the type of shit that I despise with Richard Mille. That's what came up. This is the type of shirt. How much? Oh, fuck. I want to play a game with you. I want to show you. Hold on. I'm going to show you a Hila Klein piece of clothing, and I'm going to ask you how much you think it is. Okay?
I was quite into fashion when I was like, I don't know, 16, 17. So I may do better than you imagine.
Oh, really? What were you into? What brands?
I quite like Supreme when I was that age. Actually, that was when I was a bit younger.
Oh, you were.
I guess I do like Stone. I do like Stone Island a lot. I'll be honest.
Of course. Oh my God, you're such a fucking oi bruv, dude. That's hilarious.
Have you not seen the photos of me getting the badge in, mate? It's quite a regular occurrence.
The fucking badge. All right.
Yeah,
hold
get the
on.
badge in and bash someone
Okay,
up
so how much do you think this shoe costs?
Oh, it's got to be at least $1,000.
Yeah, you nailed it. What if I were to tell you it used to be 5,670? 5,670 euros. And you can buy it with Bitcoin. The Hila Klein outlet where you can directly buy it with Bitcoin.
Nice.
Oh, the iconic high top sneakers.
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like those. What were those dog shit shoes with spikes on years ago? That were like very popular. I can't remember what the fuck they were. They were very much like a thing that was very popular when I was very interested in clothes.
You said Miskiv has better style than you. A chatter said Miskiv has better style than you. I have to respond to them. Someone is saying in the chat, Lanvin, or Louboutins, maybe.
Yeah. I think they were.
Oh my god! When I lived in Miami, I owned a pair of Creative Recreations that kind of looks like this shoe. By the way, it wasn't bedazzled, but
yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I used to just sort of buy things because I liked them. I had a pair of Stone Island shoes that were like a collab with Nike that were literally like Crocs and they had buttons on them. And I also had a Supreme coat that changed color, a Supreme Stone Island coat. So I engaged in some pretty offensive fashion when I was younger. Perhaps those shoes would have completed the outfit, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Ripped directly from this design by Philip
Do you
Klein,
like
except
ERD?
for the head.
Yes, but you will never catch me wearing ERD, obviously, because if I were to rock a ERD shirt or an ERD hoodie, which is incredible design, some of the ERD designs are incredible, people would literally assassinate me, okay? Some of the ERD stuff is good, but I would get assassinated for good reason. They're like $5,000 hoodies that are incredibly distressed. And each individual hoodie is like is unique. It's like a one-of-one almost. Nobody knows what ERD is. Don't worry about it. Yeah, $5,000 for fake punk. Exactly.
An illustrator's portfolio called Siegel's Design has a teddy bear with a head that could be identical to the head of this teddy bear from Teddy Fresh. Look at the sewing holes of the button. They're at the exact same position. I understand that it's hard to come up with new designs, but come on, didn't you draw a teddy bear like a lot of times?
I made all kinds of sketches for the teddy bear. That's actually the shirt, the shirt that has all the Teds all over it.
Oh, was that all the...
Those were all my attempts at making the logo.
It's very much possible that the design was licensed, but when was there maybe disclosure about Teddy Fresh deciding to license designs? It's okay to be transparent about wanting to save time, resources, and money.
So we didn't realize it was an exact copy until it was brought up recently. And then people say, well, why don't you do your due diligence? I'm like, bro, it's a fucking knitting book from 1995.
Okay, to be fair, like I do, as someone who also does garments, like I can totally see how they fucked up on this. Like, I know it happens sometimes.
Design is dead from this planet. It was like some cosmic coincidence that someone even found it in a thrift store.
Sure, if this is the truth, then fair enough. However, it's crazy how frequently cosmic coincidences appear to occur. Here is a Teddy Fresh sick-ass graphic of a bear about to maul someone, and here is a PS3 game from 2013 called Cabela's Dangerous Hunts.
This is a licensed image, but honestly, it's so different too. Like, even making the accusation is kind of insane. It may not even be a licensed image. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But like, it's a video game cover, and this is completely different.
When you take a closer look, there is still water around the bear's paw like in the original PS3 video game art, and you can see that the bear has a little stub because the text was blocking, so they just cut its arm off. Whatever, in the words of Ethan Klein,
it doesn't matter anyway.
I just find it kind of funny how they write off one similarity as, oh, interesting.
I will admit is a little too close for comfort. I don't know what happened with this one, to be honest. Yeah, it's Prada. I recognize that sweater. It's a Prada sweater with the flames. I mean, this one's on a hoodie. Yeah, I mean, this one's a little sus. I agree. I'm not sure what happened here. That's probably maybe the only one that he could call me out on, that I can probably look a little deeper into.
And also, like I mentioned earlier, I reached out to the charity organizations in their Good Cause section to verify the donations that have been made. Because why not fact check the fashion brand by H3? And while Victims First spoke very highly of Teddy Fresh and said that they were the largest donator at that time with an awesome contribution of $119,556,000 to the centralized Uvalde victims, let's just say that one of the other organizations listed here who do not want to be mentioned at this time have never received donations from Teddy Fresh, nor did they receive any communication from them. Maybe it was an error. I do hope that whatever happened there will get resolved and that Teddy Fresh can continue to have a great impact on various causes in the future.
By the way, she goes, Ethan needs to be criticized for being pro-Israel, and also Hila said bad crazy stuff. Okay, well, clearly you're going to have evidence to support that, right?
Absolutely. Please fasten your seatbelts, stow your disbelief, and prepare for a smooth descent into some absolutely wild podcast commentary. Here, Hila and Ethan are reacting to iDubbbz's Content Cop video.
There's one here that I want to point to. I don't know if he has it in the video,
People
but
think
apparently they said that they would get lynched if they went to Ramallah, like as a fact.
that I'm being like racist or something when I say that. I think if you, as an Israeli, go to Ramallah, they'll kill you.
What do you mean you think?
I think that I'm
That's a
saying if
fact.
you go there as Israeli, you take the turn there, you'll be died. They'll kill you.
It's not only killed, it's like lynched. It's a brutal death.
Yeah,
So.
I think.
A brutal death, as opposed to different kinds of death that are not as brutal as a lynching, I think.
It's also run by the Palestinian Authority. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Slasher, has Hummus Hassan mentioned today the attack on Barstool Nation? No, I'm gonna talk about that. Don't worry, later after we let Chris go after this
In which
video's
he
over.
contextualizes his wife's background, half Lebanese, half Irish, pointing out that historically her people were on the receiving end of colonial violence.
Lisa is half Lebanese and half Irish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we know.
For anyone unfamiliar, the Irish have been on the receiving end of a lot of oppression and genocide. On the part
of
the Lebanese, they've received a lot of oppression and attacks from the IDF. So Anissa is very well
And
familiar.
sir, do you happen to know of any violence perhaps coming towards Israel, where Hila grew up? Perhaps from Lebanon, Hezbollah, perhaps? Does that ring a bell to you, you dumb, ignorant f***? How dare you attempt to lecture?
It's kind of funny because like a couple days after this clip, he literally, or a week after this clip, he's telling me that Hezbollah's inception was a noble one. Like, his positions swing wildly from one pole to the next. You know, one day it's like it's a war, next day it's a genocide. One day, wait, Ethan is posting IG stories about a Daily Caller article on you right now. Daily Caller? The Daily Caller? Tucker Carlson's operation? The Daily Caller literally had numerous editors that were outed as white supremacists that had to be fucking fired and disgraced because they were straight up posting on fucking white supremacist websites. Like anti-Semitic white supremacist websites. Ethan purposely cropped out the Daily Call. Oh my God. As Dems wrestle with anti-Semitism crisis, media tries to elevate terrorist sympathizing extremist face of the party. Where is this from? Not from AOL, of course. It's actually from the Daily Caller. But because he doesn't want his audience to know it's from the Daily Caller, because that would call into question his, constant defense against anti-Semitism, he cropped it out to make it seem like it was a reputable outlet that said Dems are wrestling with the anti-Semitism crisis as the media tries to elevate. At no point do these guys realize like it's all right-wing publications that are writing this kind of stuff. I wonder why it's all right-wing publications that write this kind of stuff, you know? Wait, you're muted.
Is it even cropped, or is how's that been done? How's it been cropped in such a way?
I think if you're on your phone and you scroll down, the AOL banner probably like cuts it or something. I don't know. It's condensed. Yeah. Yeah, they got every broken clock. Yeah, it's like, hey, if you constantly say, well, a broken clock is right twice a day, and you just keep finding all these broken clocks, maybe your clock is broken. You know what I mean? Maybe you're the broken clock. Maybe you have actually switched teams without even realizing. Who knows?
Me on this conflict.
Familiar with the propaganda and the coming out of Israel. Choosing now, out of all the times, to be like, please defend me. No, we're not going to fucking defend you.
Okay, so this is very interesting. Wow. He says on the day that CPS was called and we're understandable.
Wow, and he also then shared Sam Cedar being criticized by the Daily Caller. the Daily Caller criticizes Sam Cedar. Ethan sides with the Daily Caller over Sam Cedar. What does this mean? Anyway.
Heated. He goes, no, I'm not going to defend you. Why? Because you're Israeli.
You're Israeli.
That's literally what he said.
I mean,
His
he
argument.
made
Do I have
sure
it
to
wrong?
include the flags so a 5-year-old could understand what he was saying. So yes, that's what he was saying.
I feel like that's exactly what he's saying. And correct me if I'm wrong.
He put the Israel flag and he said, no, she's not going to defend you.
Yeah, I just don't want people to be like, that's not what he meant. I mean, I don't see it any other way.
Stop hallucinating anti-Semitism.
There is so much to unpack here. For example, Hezbollah was formed in 1982 in response to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. How on earth can you, Hila, sit there and let Ethan talk down generational trauma while flipping this around into a narrative that makes your home country look like the victim in all of this? You, who once claimed that non-Israelis can't speak out without authority on these matters. I honestly wonder if you even realize that it was Israel, your own country, that occupied Lebanon for 18 years during your lifetime, or that in 2006, following the killing of 3 Israeli soldiers and the capture of 2 by Hezbollah, Israel responded not with diplomacy, but with massive airstrikes, artillery, and a ground invasion, resulting in deaths of over 1,100 Lebanese civilians. Civilians, not soldiers, people. And who did that? The IOF. Yes, the ones you don't want to be called terrorists.
Well, listen, they can call Israeli soldiers terrorists, but like you weren't a soldier. They didn't go that far.
I mean, I think even calling soldiers terrorists is not accurate.
The army, people should serve in because it is honorable.
A singer or something, and then they still go into the army and everybody will commend them. Like, that's really nice. You know, you're paying your due.
And you guys sit there and you laugh and say,
oh, wow.
Yeah, we know.
For anyone unfamiliar, the Irish...
And I honestly find it remarkable how Hila can say,
stop hallucinating anti-Semitism.
Right after victimizing herself because he showed the Israeli flag, even though he was only talking about the IOF in that moment.
I mean,
His
he
argument.
made
Do I have it
sure to
wrong?
include the flags so a 5-year-old could understand what he was saying. So yes, that's what he was saying. He put the Israel flag and he said, no, she's not going to defend you. Stop hallucinating anti-Semitism.
Now, I want to be very clear that obviously Hila and Ethan have the right to criticize Hamas. But it sure is interesting to see what they criticize exactly. Like here when they pause right after hearing that Israel's occupation must end in all Palestinian land.
The occupation must end in the Gaza Strip. No, I'm talking about all Palestinian lands. Once again, that's funny because it's exactly related to what he accuses me of spreading Israeli propaganda about. My point is when Israelis hear from the ocean to the sea, they hear all of Israel. And guess what? That's what the guy from Hamas is saying on
the Mediterranean Ocean. From the ocean, the Jordanian Ocean, I guess, because from the river to the sea. From water to water, man. That's
the screen of the clip you showed.
I don't understand. If a movement is for peace between 2 people and one people is telling you they're not comfortable with the statement, shouldn't we change the statement to something that both
Bro, I
people
can't
can
believe
get
they're
behind?
still on the fucking from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free as anti-Semitic shit when the ADL literally has prominently featured that in their anti-Semitism report. And also, the goddamn federal government is blackbagging people. Attorney General of the state of Michigan, Dana Nessel, collaborated with the FBI to go into the homes of 8 Muslim pro-Palestine student activists. They did home raids and claimed that it was like because they were doing anti-Semitism. And it's so fucking funny to me that these guys are like, yeah, we're pro-Palestine, by the way, but also we are totally aligned with the Trump administration on how damaging this statement is, like this emancipatory slogan is. It's crazy.
I mean, also just on the topic of the whole ADL thing. I mean, I was talking about it, or when I spoke about it on my stream, I was just saying it wouldn't really matter. The two have the exact same goals. They spread the narrative about you that the ADL then latched onto and realized would gain way more capital because Ethan has a load of rabid fans who are willing to spread their narrative that aren't just the same ADL morons who do it normally. So it's kind of like, oh, look, here's legitimacy from a massive Jewish YouTuber saying that this is really offensive to me. And
yeah, his former podcast co-host, like, that's crazy. A guy that knows him personally, like, he has so much he has so much cachet on this to fucking be like, I knew him. Like, I knew him and he's anti-Semitic. Like, that's so crazy. Well, but then, of course, if he were to say that, then the question would come to, the first question that would come to people's minds is, you had a political podcast with him for 2 fucking years. And the dynamic of the political podcast that you had with him was that he was the goofs and gaffs guy. Okay. You were the goofs and gaffs guy. And he was the guy who teaches you about politics. Like, what the fuck?
I'm not so sure about that. I've seen the content, Nuke, and you clearly tricked him. You know, he was a poor young man who you tricked into.
I
you hid your power level.
40-year-old with my sex appeal, and
exactly.
Yeah, you know what he did on the context, Nuke? By the way, he shows my first conversation ever with him, where I talk about what I always say is Democratic Socialist. I believe in incremental reform in the interim, right? All the same spiel that I give all the time because that's what I believe. That's why I support Bernie Sanders, like. And that's only for a country like the United States of America in order to build a resilient resilient base of support and develop labor militancy. But he, you know what he did that was so disingenuous in that process? He cropped, or maybe he didn't do that. I assume someone else who's smarter than him did this, but they cropped the fucking Lenin bust behind me. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin is prominently featured behind me, and so is a fucking USSR Ushanka when I'm having that conversation with him, right? When I'm talking about how, like, you know, this is not enough. Like, it's not, you know, the end all be all, but like social democracy in the interim is like perfectly permissible for and still considered radical politics in America. And he basically, someone framed it so that you couldn't see all the fucking communist iconography behind me so that he could make a better argument that I was tricking him, because I feel like even the dumbest person would have looked at that if they showed the full frame of that podcast and went, what the fuck are you saying? He has a USSR Ushanka behind him.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a very interesting narrative, you know, that you are and aren't anti-Semitic, that he was tricked by you as, you know, a man who's like lived his entire life. He's lived in multiple different countries as well. He lived in Israel, for fuck's sake. Surely you must have some understanding of politics, you know? And yeah, the whole narrative is, oh, I didn't know I was tricked by this man.
No, because they'll say, well, people will say that Israel's the aggressor, so they shouldn't have to adjust anything.
Yeah, but that's like watered down American version of what's happening there.
That's the watered down American version. Israel is the aggressor.
A moment of striking honesty from someone who is often quick to silence criticism. I wrote a bunch of conclusions for this video, but to simply summarize it, my takeaway with Hila is that no one can win. Thanks for watching the video. Bye-bye. Now, just to add one thing, if you believe Ethan's views and his moral stands were maybe indoctrinated by his wife, let me show you one final clip.
So it's really frustrating because like the way I always thought about it is like I was just born here. I don't care. Like, I don't know the history and I don't care. We're all like, just people here.
Yeah. People
and now I have to choose sides and I have to
and I was saying that's why the reason I left is because like I'm like, this isn't my fight. And Hila, I think since before she knew, thought it wasn't her fight. She never belonged there. And it's like, I don't really want to be involved in this, because when you live in Israel, you start to learn things. Or maybe I don't know if it's a brainwashing thing, or you're with the club, right? You're with that tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it gets through to you.
Yeah.
So before I went to Israel, I was very pro-Palestinian, because I went to a very liberal college. I went to UC Santa Cruz, and there it's like, they literally have protests on the campus of like Israeli soldiers executing Palestinians.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, yeah, that's totally what it is. Mm-hmm. But when you go there and then you learn, because you
I can't believe he's walking through the steps of like indoctrination, where he's like, I had the correct moral position on this issue when I went to fucking school. Okay. And then after that, I did Birthright. And it literally, like, he is the success story. That's the whole purpose of Birthright. This is the whole purpose.
Also kind of disproves the whole point of needing to go to have a good opinion on this. Surely it proves that going in changes your opinion and ruins it, basically. You know, if you still maintain that you're pro-Palestinian now, and you say that going influenced your opinion in a certain way to make you feel a way about a fight that wasn't yours.
I'm not going to lie. I do now believe that maybe I groomed this 40-year-old man because, like, clearly he got groomed by the state of Israel into changing his moral compass on the matter. And seemingly he did that when he wasn't so young either. He was like, what, 25? I don't know when he went, but he seems like he's a very he seems like he's susceptible to social conditioning. Like
yeah,
that.
from stupid sexy IDF to stupid sexy Hasan. It's quite the trajectory, you know.
Yeah. He's just impressionable. Maybe that's what it is.
Spend time with that tribe and you understand all their talking points and it's just so confusing, dude.
I do wonder what happened down the line.
Oh, he's in 19.
Guys,
that's
but
when he went.
Thanks for watching the video. Bye-bye.
All right, that was a great video from. We're not going to watch this right now. Jesus Christ! But that was a great video called "Selective Outrage." The silent podcaster Hila Klein from the Soft Take. They've done. I think I watched another one of their videos. That was a kind of a banger. But thank you, Chris Kunzler. Where can people find you?
Sorry, TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram. All of them are just my name. Thank you very much for having me on, Hasan.